23, a bunch of important numbers. 42, a bunch of important numbers. 481, a bunch of important numbers. 5, a bunch of important numbers. 0, a bunch of important numbers. 9, a bunch of important numbers. 23, a bunch of important numbers. 7, a bunch of important numbers. 11, a bunch of important numbers. 11. I'm in a cult, I'm in a cult, I'm in a cult, I'm in a cult.
Okay, it is 8/30, 2024. This is Chief Crow, Flat Earth Worms, Ball Earth Cult. I'll put a link to the track below, but just search Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, Ball Earth Cult. And yeah, the cult is very insecure. That's how you know you're in a cult or somebody's in a cult. They tell you, and they get very triggered and emotional when someone else doesn't agree with their beliefs. It's like, I'm not the least bit affected by people who are wrong about things or have different opinions. I don't get triggered by it. But you point out that the latest image from the space station just looks like a terrible science fiction set on basically a stage, and people get very triggered. Like, how dare you not believe? And it's a matter of standards of evidence. And when it comes to things like evidence for the space program being real, the standard of evidence is about the same as what you get with the UFO cult, UFO believers. It's like hearsay or see-say. So Curiosity on Twitter, or MA Astronomer, said $1 billion view. And you have this astronaut staring down at the Earth. Now, I want to have you pay attention to what you don't see here. Because what gives away the illusion here isn't what they show you. Because with all magic tricks, it's designed to exclude certain things, misdirect your attention, and the truth would be what you aren't shown. And if you're in your seat and you're looking at the magician up there on the stage, you just don't have the perspective to know what's really going on. But in this case, you see these often. Photos of astronauts in space, sometimes they're taking pictures of the Earth, but you don't see what their eyeballs see. And if you could be in that person, in that astronaut's head right now, looking out that window, what would you see? Would you see the rest of the Earth instead of just this portion of it? Would you see a globe suspended in space with stars and stuff in the back? No, you wouldn't. You would see a studio. And so I responded with cool movie set. Note that we don't see what she sees because that would reveal a studio on Earth. I would also add that we've given NASA many more than just $1 billion for this terrible science fiction production. Anyway, blasphemed against the Ball Earth cult, and I've been catching flack all day on X. And by the way, tonight's live stream is about Disease X, because I've been saying for more than a year, since basically Musk turned it into X, that Twitter would be the vector for Disease X, a mind virus afflicting the right wing that would serve as the basis for shutting down the internet like an online quarantine with the complicity of the public. And that Musk is a fall guy for free speech, making the case that we need to regulate our commons of cyberspace, just like we have to regulate space, low Earth orbit, because we don't want one billionaire to flood the zone with space junk, just like we don't want one billionaire to flood our commons of cyberspace with mind junk. And I called this out that this would be the vector for Disease X, a mind virus. And look what's happened. The Mpox breaks out. The 90-foot tall monkey statue, the video game with 1 million concurrent players where they're all the monkey god. Bad monkey comes out. WHO says it's a global emergency. I said this monkey virus, this Mpox, is really a reference to the rage virus that's going to hit the right wing. And they've already attached it. I mean, this rage virus and right wing being getting agitated because of online websites has been a thing for a while. Telegram, Terrorgram as they're calling it. They arrest the CEO of Telegram. Musk is being threatened with arrest, and then Brazil is banning Twitter. And I guess there's some kind of fine, like $8,900 for using a VPN to access it. So in other words, we're seeing the Disease X quarantine beginning. And Elon Musk set the stage for this. So again, this is the mind virus pandemic that I have been warning you about. Some of the responses here, again, to the NASA thing, a lot of triggered people here. And the main difference between them and us is their evidence is secondhand. And they always talk in the same way. I'm just getting back to this tweet about the billion-dollar movie set that looks like it's a low-budget film on a shoestring budget, like a student film. The Church of Nastology's pageantry looks like a student film. It's not just bad sci-fi. But this individual Mikey says, you can literally see it orbiting the Earth, you ape. Or are you not an intellectual? Because you deny what you see. And this makes you a mentally ill moron. Okay, now, just to kind of parse this a little bit, you can see it. So when I follow up with, have you seen it? The answer is always the same. I said, do you have any pics? Pics or it didn't happen. Show me your pics. Not from NASA's Special Effects Department. And his response is, have you ever heard of a telescope? And then he shares a cartoon or a CGI of somebody else's ISS. This is definitely AI. My point being, this person is saying, you can go see it. You can download the app. You. And I'm like, have you seen it? And 100% of the time, the answer is no. It shuts people up. It really shuts them up. It shut McToon up. In fact, I called McToon about this during a debate we were having. And I was like, hey, McToon, you keep telling me I can go see it. Have you? And he said no. Like, he was just flabbergasted. And he looked like he'd been punched in his punchable face. And I was like, wow, this guy was really taken aback because nobody had ever pushed the burden of proof back on him. They hate that. And recently, McToon emailed me, or he tweeted at me a DM. He slithered into my DMs, and he's like, do you have a P900? And I said, no. We started talking, and he asked me if I was a Poe, a parody of extremism. Like, do you not really believe in spaceships? And I said, show me your picture of the spaceship. And he couldn't do it. They can't do it. Anyway, that's the Ball Earth cult in a nutshell for you. The glurfs. Glurfs are going to glurf. I have no interest in changing their minds. Their heads are in the box. That's cool. All right, let's see here. Joined by Roxy, Howard Boyd, Jennifer Reeves. Thirst for Truth. Appreciate that. Speak Penguin or Die. That's what SPOD stands for. Messianic Charlatan. Let's go. Symbia. Elephant Tusk says Dr. Fauci had sex with a West Nile mosquito. Wasn't it like an ape 33 years before 2020 when AIDS came out? And then, I don't know. We can't blame him for everything. He's mostly just a character anyhow. You know, I coined this new term, Bill Gatesophobes. If you're a Bill Gateophobe, you're basically scared of this two-dimensional cartoon character who at any point is going to block the sun somehow if we don't stop him. And he's going to depopulate the planet. How many years has Trutherville been chanting about Bill Gates? He's going to depopulate us. He's going to turn all the frogs gay. He's going to block the sun. Nothing has happened. Nothing. Unbelievable that people still fall for this stuff. Being a Bill Gatesophobe is the equivalent. It's the intellectual equivalent of being a Muskophobe. You might laugh at the lefties afraid of Musk, but if you're afraid of Bill Gates, you're just as bad. And they're both clowns in the same clown show. Neither one is a villain nor a savior. Musk is not a savior for free speech. He's a saboteur. Bill Gates is not a genocidal maniac. He's a straw man character, a punching bag for you to attack so you can shoot yourself in the foot and get yourself censored. It's a rigged game. And if you take sides, you lose. That's what's so obvious, to me anyway, that, you know, it's obvious it's a trap. You know, if you're pro anything, you get a pass. If you're anti, you get censored. Well, the anti and the pro are both controlled by the same capstone level programmers. So you shouldn't really be pro or pro-anti position, which is knee-jerk non-thinking. That's why I maintain anti is the best position to be in. It's the only sensible place. Joined by Reverse History, Fill the Blank, Olive Goering says ugly cat pillows, mosquito singing. Dave Hazel, Ted Stryker says auto hoax and chill. Oh yeah, exactly. It's pretty much redundant. If you're auto hoaxing, if you're suspending judgment, if you're waiting for facts to arrive before reacting to the latest atrocity, you're not going to experience the shock that is generally accompanied by the agitprop, by the psyops. You're not going to be reacting like everybody else. And when I say everybody else, I mean Normieville and Trutherville. Trutherville and Woketown overreact. Normie land just reacts. We don't react here. What we're doing here is considered responding. There's a big difference. We control the timing of it. I might wait a few more days before I talk about the latest, let's say, what do we had? At least recently there's been a couple of high-profile psyops, but let's say there's a school shooting. I might wait 2 or 3 days before I make my opinions firmly known on this thing. I might want to wait because they have a habit here, not a habit, a tactic of dropping leads. Like, oh, the shooter, like, do you remember when Joel Osteen's church? Now, is it Joe Osteen or Joel Osteen? Or where does the L go? Or are there 2 L's, Joel Osteen? The Mandela people have me all screwed up on that. They implanted all kinds of false memories. So now I don't know if it's Joe or Joel Osteen or Alstein. I just know that he wasn't there when somebody shot up his church, sadly. And I remember right after the shooting, there was this story going around that it was another trans shooter radicalized by Reddit. So a lot of people ran with that. Well, then you find out it didn't happen. Okay, Osteen. Damn, it's Osteen. Osteen's Lakewood Church was shot up last February. But his mega church was shot up, and the story was planted to get you running in the wrong direction. Happens all the time. So you have to watch out for what I call truther bait. Truther bait is put there so they can instantly discredit you later. And they also like to drip, drip, drip this news out. Because what they want to do is they want to discredit non-mainstream sources. Not just give you, a voice on the fringe, but they want to discredit you and say, no, you don't have the tools to discern the truth here. Just leave it up to us. And you have to note, too, that Trutherville is complicit in their own censorship. Remember, Alex Jones from, InfoWars is 100% a part of the clown show. He's part of January 6th. He's a Sandy Hooker. In fact, he's on their side of the screen. He's part of the magic show. So we have to also recognize that Trutherville is self-sabotaging in a way of, I guess this is their way of dealing with the freethinkers. The freethinkers leave the box and they go into this alt box, and then the whole thing is just brought down together. And it's an active measure. There are so many ways they're attempting and successfully bringing it down. One of the things we see is cognitive sabotage, like Mandela effects or misinterpretations of the observable phenomenon to lead us away from the truth. We see this all the time. One of my criticisms of synchromysticism is simply that it's a misinterpretation of the deliberate alignment between the entertainment media and the news media. There's a process here of entraining the public through propaganda employed through what we call predictive programming, but it's post-hypnotic suggestion, it's conditioning, it's a form of boring neural pathways in your mind about various events so that when they simulate it on the world stage, you just assume it's real. And we've been observing this for some time, but there are other active measures meant to discredit this. And this is one of the other things I wanted to talk about today, date coders. The other day, I mentioned that there were a lot of these people with their Gematria calculators calculating that August 29th would be the day. In fact, here's one of the examples. Will there be a huge Trump-related news event on 8/29? All the codes point that way. Trump will be 78 years and 77 days old. It'll be one day after. This is typical of this group of individuals. And what they do is they point out a date, align it with Trump, and they look back and they say, this is this many months, this many days, or this many weeks from the release of this movie, which has this theme. So they're kind of reverse, like in kind of like a Texas sharpshooter fallacy explains it. It's not hard to do. The mechanism here is you have a pool of content to draw from. For them, it's any movie related to Trump. And then you just match the dates and you find something. And if you can find 3 or 4 things, you can kind of build the case. And it's called the Texas sharpshooter because it's based on this idea of a man with a gun shooting the side of a barn and then drawing a target around the smallest grouping of holes. And then he shows some people, hey, look, I'm a sharpshooter. And they look at that and they say, yeah, he's a sharpshooter. Look at all those bullseyes. But what he's not drawing their attention to is the fact that every other hole in the barn represents a miss. So on the 28th, I messaged a few of these individuals and I said, I'm going to hit you up in 24 hours. And we're going to talk about this. In 24 hours, we're going to discover or discuss maybe why you were wrong, see if you'll even acknowledge it. And I didn't think any of them would. In fact, Michael in Truth is a channel I like, a lot of the content he brings up, but he blocked me today. He blocked me. Why did he block me? Because I was questioning his methodology. And he had so many examples of why something big was going to go down yesterday, and it didn't go down. And I said, this is what happened during the Super Bowl. This is what happened last August 4th. This is a pattern at this point. And I'm recognizing that many of these truthers aren't honest enough to be able to admit when they're wrong, especially if you're wrong about something for a very long time and you've built an entire channel on it. This is clickbait. So, for example, 777, one of these channels I follow as well, he said, well, many of these codes will still fit August 30th if you don't include the end date in the calculation. And Trump will be in Johnstown today. So they're reading into things and making prophecies, is my point. So the prophecy here is that something's going to happen possibly today. This is Q level cope. I should have spelled cope with a Q here, where they're all throwing their chips in. This is the day. On August 23rd, RFK Jr. will be 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. So he goes and he endorses Trump on that day. And this is seen as some kind of indicator that they're right. But right about what? So RFK Jr.'s, like, both of his voters are going to vote for Trump now. Like, nothing biblical is going to happen because of this. But moreover, they predict this stuff after the fact, or they construct these things ad hoc, and they never admit when they're wrong. Now, I called out Michael in Truth a few times, and that's why he blocked me, because he knows I'm right. And I think these guys are aiming for clicks. So here's what I wrote about them. Date coders is what they call themselves, are disinformation agents, false prophets, or clickbait prophets. Date coders are spammers with 50 Gematria calculators incessantly spanning X with the latest prophecy. And it is a lot of spam. These false prophets are running cover for the PSYOP entertainment complex. This is what they're doing, in my opinion. Actually, I'm pretty sure that this is the objective, because this isn't normal behavior. You might even define this as schizoid. This is apophenia, by definition. This is not what we're doing. What they're doing here is they're covering up legitimate evidence of synchronized entertainment and news media, predictive programming, and what it reveals about how distorted the consensus worldview is as a result of all of this mind-bending propaganda, the news-bending propaganda. So they're distracting from methodical fake news and media deconstruction. And instead, they're engaging in new agey, occult, end times prophecy, and none of their prophecies come true. None. They always miss. And these anonymous people, they're always anonymous. They're bearing authentic connections that would reveal scripted news events. And whether they know it or not, they're concealing the truth about predictive programming beneath a mountain of jumbled Gematria calculations and absurdist formulations like 333 months and 3 days, with the built-in assumption that 3333 has some kind of special significance. And you'll find many others, and I'm sure you can name names, who employ this false prophet grift by predicting sports outcomes. Gamblers that use Gematria calculations. And they make a living. They make a living because they're right some of the time. And whenever they're wrong, they don't take responsibility. But when they're right, oh, look, you subscribe to my Gematria channel, and I will calculate the next sporting event for you. And I used to try to figure this out. It's like, I agree that sports are largely propaganda, fakeable, in many instances scripted. But there's a point here where some of these very big channels have made a career out of what you can describe as a grift, a scam. And so the date coders, they call themselves, and Gematria prophets are distracting people from what the predictive programming really is. And what I think they're doing is adding fog, mysticism, confusion, and they all have an obsession with the world being about to end. And it never does. So you have these new doomsday cults proliferating throughout X. And I'm the only one calling them out. And whenever I do, I get blocked. But if I don't do it, nobody will. And we have to undermine their credibility, not channel by anonymous channel, but we have to point out their flawed methodology. This is designed, I think, to lead people away from uncovering how our worldview is distorted, and then they replace it with end of the world, doomsday prophecy, mind junk. And they've never been right. And if nothing happens today, they double down on it because of me. They're going to have to admit it. But you'll note, they're all anonymous. I don't trust anonymous prophets. Like if I had the date that it's all going to go down, I would want to be in front of it. You know, for my GoFundMe or whatever I was doing. You would want to own it. Like, hey guys, the world's going to end, give me credit. But no, these guys are so selfless, they hide behind a little avatar. But they're not so selfless that they don't get as many clicks as they can, because clicks are money. I don't know how much money, because I'm not monetized, but I think for every click, they're getting something. It adds up. Okay, continuing. Dinah South says, remember when Bill Gates got the pie in the face? Yeah, some people think that his exterminationist campaign is revenge for that. Rocco Calzone says, catch you tomorrow for the replay. Oh yeah, on the 24/7, it's going to be a loop of the latest few live streams. And I just finished that now. Last night I was busy converting files to MP3s. But the 24/7 stream will continue, but I just want to make sure it's the most recent material. And I'm putting hour 1 from my latest Bonversation. I'm going to be putting the latest Fakeologist. Okay, continuing here. Thank you, David Hazel. Appreciate the gas in the think tank. King Ravana said, Joel Osteen had the money in the bathroom walls, smell the money through the drywall. Well, there are some people who believe that Joel Osteen has been misspelling his names for years because of the Mandela effect. Like, does he know? You'd think they would ask him. Like, did you know that your name changed? David Hazel has passed out 5 blue wrenches. You know what to do with them. Abuse the power responsibly. And these have gone to Ryler, Let's Go, Inks G, Roxy W, and Jennifer Reeves. Ted Stryker says, Osteen was one who didn't open the church doors after a hurricane for the people to take shelter. Surely God would think differently. Well, what's that verse? Is it Genesis 6:6? About the ark, and there's a certain point where the ark door is closed. So maybe he was sending a message. Genesis 7:16, God shut Noah into the ark. Anyway, climate change is what they'll blame. It depends. This is one of those bifurcated psyops. If there's a big flood, who are you going to blame? Well, if you're on the left, you're going to blame Republicans and capitalism. If you're on the right, you're going to blame leftists, liberals, for their wickedness, and God brings the floodwaters. And some will even mix it up, and they'll say, well, God caused the global warming. Some people can merge the two. They can reconcile this science-religion dichotomy, this intentional divide they've created, this cultural divide, which is ridiculous in itself, because it's a misnomer to say scientism is science. The mainstream religion is scientism and nascentology. But it's also a mistake to suggest that the mainstream worldview is any less of a religion than any right-wing Christian nationalist end times doomer, because both sides on the fringes agree that we're in the end times. Although end times is actually more of a mainstream belief. And if you don't believe it and you're a normie, you're just not doing your science. Because if you believe the science, you would believe that the climate change scenario is so terrible that we're all going to die in 2030. And if you're a big believer in the space program, then you would have to also accept that Apophis 99942 planet killer is going to hit us on Friday the 13th, which will be in 2029, April 2029. Friday, April the 13th, 2029, big planet killer is going to kill us all. And that's just the science. It's the science, it's the psyopt science. They just merged it all again. We live in the Disney universe, maybe the Marvel universe. It's kind of a mashup. Definitely Planet Netflix. Nicotrama says, taking David Hazel's lead, supporting the best show on the internet. You know, I appreciate that. This think tank has been going strong since 2017, and my plan is, I'm prepared to go 30 years. 30 years if that's what it takes. But I find that when I plan long term, I tend to reach milestones kind of sooner. But like, we're not going away. The whole point of that is that we do have to create this space. There needs to be a place for skeptics and free thinkers that aren't marching lockstep behind controlled opposition agents dropping breadcrumbs. It's all reverse psychology. Oh, they don't trust the news. So just scatter it around the ground like breadcrumbs, and they'll fight it for themselves. Oh, they don't believe the government? Yeah, just put out a leaked government document, and they'll believe it. There's nothing a truther won't believe if it's printed on a leaked government document, or if there's a patent about it, they'll think it exists. We have a new axiom about this, that we need to treat all manifestos from mass shooters, all leaked government documents, and all whistleblower material as props. That's it. Just props in a movie. If a whistleblower isn't mentioning the PSYOP entertainment complex and how fake is the rule, not the exception, if they don't mention news bending and how the entire space program is just a mass mind control operation, then they're not real whistleblowers. You know, like, this guy's a whistleblower, listen to him. It's like, he's a #1 bestseller on Amazon, and he didn't drop anything of particular import. Nothing I found interesting. I'd be impressed if something came out where they were like legitimately undermining the false authority mass media has assumed, but that's not going to happen. They don't give you anything. No aliens, no chupacabras. Peter W says 33D chess. Oh yeah, the QAnoners are onto it right now because Donald Trump has been retweeting Q stuff. He's going all in. And I have to say, he's kind of a comedian at some points. I was listening to a speech where Trump was out there, Biff Tannen, we could call him Biff Tannen, he's at that stage, where he spent 90 seconds like breaking down in a very thoughtful way why he thinks that a particular noun, a particular word, was the right word to use to describe what happens when Kamala Harris touches something. And this is making its rounds. They're saying it's vulgar. But he just really was breaking down. I could probably play it if you want to hear it at some point. I have a link. Ryler says, Q Cope is like, you see, man, it's all going on behind the scenes. Trump is working with people who are going to change America for the better. It's all behind the scenes. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic because they're like, oh no, Trump had to lose in 2020, but he's the secret president just so we can all see how bad it is when he's not president. And then he's going to take back over. That's the new Cope, spelled with a Q. They hit their Q pipe and they're like, oh, 45-47 means he's president 45, 46, and 47, and everything else is just a show. But they never really gave up hope. Even if he loses, I don't know if they're going to give it up. And part of me, just out of maybe it's malice. I don't know. I think it'd be funny. Maybe it's not funny, but it would be kind of good, in my opinion, or entertaining, I should say, if something happened to Biden. Because then all of that 47 merch, all the signs, all the neck tattoos that the MAGA rappers got, everything with the 47 on it, including all of Trump's hats, would have to be altered because he's no longer the presumptive 47, because that would automatically go to Kamala Harris. So they'd have to change the 7 to an 8, which isn't hard. You just got to connect that with a little squiggly. Like the tattoos. You got a 48 tattoo, assuming he wins. You might just want to wait and then possibly change it to a 49. But it's going to be a mess. I mean, you couldn't do more damage to his brand and his ego if you took the Trump off Trump Tower. Think about it. How many millions of dollars have gone into merchandise that will now be representing the opposition? I think that would be a power move. They should just I don't know. We'll see. Lord Laney says, there are so much low information predictors as there are greasy ex-girlfriends. Yeah, these low info predictors are largely unchallenged, and I think a lot of them are using it for betting. And that's when I realized that it had to be a hoax, because there's no way that you figured out the language of God and you're doing Kabbalah and numerology and you're predicting the future. Like, that's a pretty big deal. And so what do you do with that power? Oh, I place bets on baseball games and I get other people to gamble. It's like, I don't think that God gave you this special gift to read between the lines and make prophecies so that you could make money gambling. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I realized it was a grift. Thomas Hughes says, the way a carnival barker makes a living. Yeah, carnival barkers. Like, I guess I should just say it. Somebody needs to ask Zachary Hubbard if he's a Texas sharpshooter. Ask him if he's a Texas sharpshooter. I'm probably mispronouncing Gematria calculators. And I'm not ridiculing it. I understand it, though. At least my understanding of Gematria came from reading 777 and other Kabbalistic writings. And it was explaining that this is a way, well, you have to understand that the letters and numbers were not distinct, that the letters had numerological equivalents. So you could basically look at them as the same thing. And so the idea here is that words of a similar numerical value would have some kind of a connection, like in their meaning. And this is kind of subjective, but the purpose of it is to see or discern or create the appearance of meaningful synchronicity, which you can do. But as it's used in practice, it's not really used to predict the future, but rather to encode additional layers of meaning into something, like a subtext in a way, at least within magical ritual. Like, look at sigil magic. The concept behind this is that you could have a statement of intent and you could compress it into a mashup of various letters so that you can't actually read it anymore. But the idea here is that it retains the meaning you imbued it with, even if you mash it up into something. And that as this new symbol that you've created, it still contains the meaning that you encoded into it, even though you can't read it, which would therefore cause it to, in their theory, bypass what they call your psychic filter. That you can't cast a spell without tricking your waking consciousness. You have to do a sleight of mind. But my point being is that the theory here is it has to do with encoding layers of meaning. They do it with colors, sounds, and symbols. But it's taken on a new existence here online, where people are looking at this as, oh, well, this means this. It's like, on what authority? Like, I'm still asking them, please explain to me what 33333 means, or 66666. And when you get into this thing with the dates, it gets to be ridiculous because you could just make anything fit. And then as long as you're within a day, you can say something like, oh, well, we have to actually count to the end of the day. And some will say they're just grasping at straws. but they'll say, oh, well, we're looking at the wrong calendar. There was this guy last year who had 15,000 followers because he said JFK was coming back. And he would often say, well, we're on the wrong calendar. So every day he would have a different calendar. He had so many different versions that he could never be wrong. And that's what typifies Texas sharpshooters. They can't be wrong because they draw the target after the fact. If you wanted to be a doomsday prophet, you could simply memorize Revelation, read a newspaper, connect some dots, and there you go. Pick a date. Ryler05 says, Zach Hubbard and his ilk have done more to help the gambling industry. Yeah, they really have. False hope. Not to mention, I really think God would be mad if God indeed created the Kabbalah. He'd be mad that somebody would be using it for gambling. Mango Penguin says, when's the next meteor shower? I'd like to be away from the light pollution to enjoy that. Where can you go? I don't have anywhere nearby free of light pollution. Although I still haven't seen the ISS, and I keep looking. And I've been told it's brighter than Venus. And I get the weirdest answer when I ask people, why haven't you taken a video of it with the selfie? Like a selfie video with the space station going over your head. I think that would be cool. Hey guys, look, there's a spaceship behind me. Nobody ever does it. And they always say things like, well, the light's not bright enough to show up on your iPhone. Okay, well, it's brighter than Venus, but it can't show up on the iPhone, so now you just move the burden of proof. You kind of dodged it. Like, oh, well, we can't get you evidence. But you said it was super easy. And I'm not going to rely on C-say. He said he saw it, so I'm going to believe it. Lord Laney says, I just read about armed Venezuelan gangs taking over hotels in Colorado. Guessing that's going to boil over into a nice, juicy psyop. Yeah, I saw the video. I saw a few videos, and they were blaming Venezuelan gangs. I'm waiting, though. I'm waiting for more information because I suspect that there's something else going on there. Every time there's an election, you have these xenophobic narratives thrown out there. Like, oh, they're coming over here, military-aged men, etc. Okay, let's continue. I got this tweet from Ronnie Jackson. So, Ronnie Jackson, on Twitter, said, and just to give you an idea of who he is, Trump-endorsed Texan, conservative for Congress, congressman for Texas 13, former White House physician, retired Navy Rear Admiral. So Ronnie Jackson has 786,000 followers. He said, my nephew was injured at the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Thankfully, his injury was not serious and he's doing well. My family was sitting in the front, near where the president was speaking. They heard shots ringing out. They weren't ringing out. It was just like a rapid succession, pop, pop, pop. My nephew realized he had blood on his neck. So he's telling this story about how his nephew had nearly died. And I said, your nephew is a crisis actor, and your entire family is suspect. Nobody died in that media psyop magic trick. He's not going to answer me, but I just had to say it because nobody died. It was a magic trick. There was no second shooter. The patsy didn't die. All these stories about inside job are for low info believers. That's very basic stuff. Basic red herring, recycled stale conspiracy narratives. It's not even good conspiracy candy. It's lazy is what it is. And so nobody answered me. But yeah, again, nobody died in that psyop magic trick. It wasn't a false flag. It was a magic trick. X banned in Brazil. Musk calls judge evil dictator. So this is part of the story I mentioned earlier about Disease X going into the quarantine phase. The internet is going to start quarantining against Elon Musk. Top Brazilian judge orders suspension of X in Brazil amid feud with Musk. a Brazilian Supreme Court justice. And remember, too, I mentioned this rage virus, right wing, and that its angst would be directed against the courts. That's why it was significant that in the same week of the WHO declaring Mpox, Bad Monkey comes out, 90-foot tall statue, Black Myth video game where 1 million people are playing Monkey Man at the same time. All these things are lining up. And I was suggesting here that this is going to be the rage virus, and then a monkey attacked a lawyer at the Supreme Court. And that was all in the news. And there's another monkey loose in Ohio. So this is all just connected. So the fact is he's got some beef with a Supreme Court justice who warned Musk on Wednesday, quote, X could be blocked in Brazil if he doesn't comply with his order to name a representative and establish a 24-hour deadline. Musk showed his disrespect for Brazilian sovereignty. Now, I've seen some follow-up reports on this that suggest that it's already happening and that there's a fine if you log in with the VPN. So again, the blocking of X is the disease X quarantine that we have been talking about. One more point here. The fact that the QAnons are constantly able to recycle Q drops proves something here. It proves that you can take any body of content from the past and you can attach it to a future event after, like retroactively. The QAnons are constantly doing this. So we really have, I believe, decoded the date coders. Okay, catching up on comments. Peter W. says Santa sleigh equals ISS. Yeah, it is. There's as much evidence. Actually, there's more evidence for Santa than there is for the ISS. If you just go off of trusting what your parents say and the physical, the gifts. But no, they've been actually using the ISS tracker to let kids track Santa, which is kind of ironic. But you do have to have a childlike epistemology to believe that this thing is orbiting up there without having seen it for yourself. It means that you're just believing the authority, which is fine if that's what you're into, if that's your religion. If you outsource your perceptions and your cosmology to government mind control, it's just a religion. MSM is world religion. Jacob Mendon says TikTok is promoting the Venezuelans in Aurora big time. Interesting. I've been reading some comments on Reddit, and I've come across a lot of threads suggesting that it's pretty much business as usual. That's what I'm wondering. Is this hype or is it some escalation? And I don't think it's an escalation. I think it's hype. Take an isolated event and flash it everywhere. They do this all the time. They did it with subways. I'm not saying there isn't subway violence. Like, I would not go into certain subways because I wouldn't want to be tossed onto the tracks. I would like to go just, I guess, maybe as like an auto hoax destination. Somebody needs to go to the subway where Frank James fired 33 rounds off. The Prophet of Doom. It happened just as the Batman movie came out, like this real life Riddler. Well, another thing about Riddler, the movie opens up and he has this beef with the mayor, kills the mayor with a tucker. His weapon. The weapon of the Riddler is a tucker. So then you have, at the same time, in the news, Tucker Carlson is being blamed for the mass shooter going through a Buffalo grocery store and shooting a bunch of people because of replacement theory. Now, the Tucker being the weapon, obvious little tie-in, but they were suggesting that this was a internet radicalized shooter. And in the Batman movie, the Riddler radicalizes his 500 followers and they blow up a dam. Prophet of Doom, the guy who shot up the subway, 33 rounds, by the way, had about 500 followers. And like the Riddler, he was threatening the mayor in video. He's uploading videos threatening the mayor over a lack of adequate mental health services, which is exactly what the Riddler was doing. So what's this Riddler Prophet of Doom connection? It's concurrent programming. And what's interesting about this too? It comes out on 3/4. So the new Batman movie, Riddler's the new bad guy. You have a real life counterpart to the Riddler in The Prophet of Doom, 3/4/2022. On that day, Sarnoff, Joker Sarnoff, the Sarnoff brothers, the Boston bombing, he had his death penalty reinstated. Like, that's interesting. The Joker from the Boston bombing had his death penalty reinstated on the day that Batman came out. And there have been a number of connections between the Batman movies and high-profile psyops. 6-3 ruling on 3/4/2022. Court reinstates the death penalty for Joker Sarnoff. Again, Joker, Batman, death penalty reinstated. You can kind of see how it all ties together neatly. Let me catch up on your comments, then we'll get into the next thing, because Space Wars is making an appearance. Jessica Lynn says, what do you make of the hockey player and his brother who are riding bikes and got killed by a drunk driver? If not real, where do these people go? The team's goalie died and was replaced by an Elvis. Now, these are great questions. Like, what happens to these individuals if they're not really dying? Like, do you remember last year, you had a hockey player, his name was Adam, something Adam, and his throat was slashed by another player, number 22. And around the same time, Derek Chauvin was stabbed 22 times, and then you had the Proud Boys leader, a 22-year sentence. We just had all kinds of 22s connected with this narrative of black versus white. Derek Chauvin, of course, part of this race war narrative, and then he gets stabbed 22 times. And this stuff was all aligning, and so I was like, this has got to be some kind of a psyop with these. But where do they go? If these are staged events that are meant to convey some kind of a message, I think it'd be very easy for them to be repurposed. They're getting promoted. Now, if you can give me a link there, I'll pass it on. I know somebody who might be interested in a story about a hockey player getting killed and then being replaced by an Elvis. Okay, continuing. Mazel says, I'm in Aurora. The home door is crawling with immigrants. Not sure about any gangs. Right. It could be a number of things. I live in Albuquerque here, and I think a few days ago, down the street, there was an individual who was trying to stop some teens from stealing his truck. And from what I read, they unloaded 27 rounds into him. Like, there were 3 shooters, just lit them up, just terrible. And I don't have any information because they're teens. They haven't published their information. But in Reddit, there were suggestions that these were gang members who might have, I don't know, though. I'll have to look. It makes this place sound dangerous. And a lot of people think Albuquerque is a dangerous place because there are a lot of these things. But I kind of think it's mostly exaggerated. People think that Breaking Bad is a documentary. Jurassic Liar says, I will call in if you want me to about the hockey player, but you need to open your phone lines. Okay, I'll open up the phone lines in just a few moments. Thomas Hughes says, Peter Tosh died on 9/11. Oh, let me get to that. Let me get to that before we get any further. Because that's something that just came across my Discord feed. So on Discord it was... I want to figure out who it was that posted it. Oh, Evening Star. So Evening Star posts the World Wrestling Entertainment clip where Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage are talking about detonating the Twin Towers. So we've all heard this clip before about the Twin Towers. They're going to bring them down and how many tons of TNT. I'll play this short clip, but we have more to add on to this. Okay, here it is. Okay, they're talking about the tag team match, the Mega Powers, and they're ranting about how they're going to tear down the Twin Towers. I'm going to play just a few seconds of it, but I want to get to the point because most of you have already heard this.
I'm going to explain to you that there's going to be a whole lot of help and there's going to be a whole lot of hurt in this match. As far as the mega power goes, Elizabeth is our foundation, man. She's taught us how to tear the Twin Towers down one block at a time. And if something happens, we could wipe out the whole foundation and destroy them all at once.
So they're talking about the destruction that's in Twin Towers. Randy Savage gets into it. But he says this interview took place on January 28th. 1989. So 128, and he said, this is like the time of the Twin Towers collapse. So I didn't know about the time the Twin Towers collapsed. So I looked into this, of course, and it was 10:28 a.m. the North Tower collapses. So 10:28. And again, this interview was on 128. So here are some of the immediate connections that I can add on to this. First of all, 128 is the date of the Challenger explosion, and the Twin Towers were replaced by the One World Trade Tower, which opened on 113. So there's that connection. But then there's the leave the world behind connections. So last year, or early, we were talking about earlier this year, the Francis Scott Key Bridge being destroyed. Well, it was hit at 1:28 a.m., which is interesting in and of itself because, again, collapse at 1:28. But on Netflix, it was released on 12/8. So the 128. On December 8th, Netflix will begin streaming. Now, it went out in the movies on 11/22. So JFK assassination. But then it comes out on 128. And also remember, it was on 10/28 that Matthew Perry died on the lunar eclipse, which connects to a couple of things in this movie. But in the movie, of course, it was all about Friends. Matthew Perry, of course, is in Friends. So we have the 128 connections. And in the movie at 128, you have an image of the, I think it's Brooklyn Bridge being destroyed. But again, this was the story of the shipping container, the Dolly, crashing into the Francis Scott Key Bridge at 128, which again has some connections to leave the world behind, to the Challenger explosion and the 1028 time of one of the Twin Towers falling. So just a few little details to add to this. Conscious Daughter says the David Bowie estate has released the official video of Starman from the Ziggy Stardust tour shot in 72 and 73 by Mick Rock. Today is 8:30. Ooh, nice find there. Okay, let's see. This is what that says. They don't want people to travel internationally, so they make migrants villains. They don't want us to travel locally, so prepare for more lockdowns. Yeah, I don't take the military age men migrant thing seriously because they roll that out every election cycle. Xenophobia is targeted at the right, and then the left is open borders. This is all by design, and this attitude is engineered. If you think these things, you're programmed, because they're also programming the right to fear extraterrestrials because they're demons. Ask Tucker Carlson. They work with the government. They're really pushing that angle of Satanism and demons, connecting it with aliens and secret government. And so the illegal aliens and extraterrestrials represent existential threats to the right. And the left is like, no, we love aliens. Probe us. They're all for it. They're open borders, open skin. Like basically the right wing is typically closed borders, national borders, home, defend your home with a gun, your skin, nothing gets through the skin. And the left is like porous in every level. Invade our planet, invade our country, invade our homes, invade my bloodstream. Invade our minds, because they're an open portal to the MSM programming, whereas the right wing is somewhat skeptical of the mainstream. Although, as we all know, they're in a box of their own. All right, CJ, this is where it's at. Posted a link. This is an NHL player with the Joker helmet. And his name is Elvis. Okay, well, I'll have to get into the Elvis connections with JL. I'll be opening up the phones here in just a moment. Okay, let's continue. U.S. gears up for space war with Russia and China as the West is warned to be ready. As we have been expecting, blast off U.S. gearing up for all-out space war with Russia and China as General warns West must be ready. So if you believe in outer space and space stations, if you believe that Starlink is orbiting CubeSats and not stratospheric balloons dangling above your head, whatever you choose to believe, I would just say you're going to have to get ready. So if you believe in this stuff, get your helmets on. Yep. Get your house ready for space junk and possibly space war. And, you know, Space Force controls all of the military satellites. I mean, what a scam this is. You got rods from God, which are kinetic weapons. Big tungsten, I think it's, let me bring these up. Rods of God. I think they're like the size of light poles. But the idea is they are attacking you with kinetic weapons, kinetic orbital strikes. One of them was called Project Thor, I believe. Yeah, Project Thor. Launching telephone pole-sized kinetic projectiles made from tungsten from Earth's orbit to damage targets on the ground. They created the concept while doing research at Boeing. And the guy doing this, Jerry Pournelle, later became a science fiction writer. No, he was already a science fiction writer when he made up the science fiction weapon of kinetic bombardment from space. So he was already sci-fi. People don't know. Astronauts are just cosplaying. They're cosplayers. It's costume. Lieutenant General David Miller said, "We're moving from establishment into developing the service into combat credible military service that includes space as an operational domain for warfighting. To compete in today's environment and deter conflict, we're going to have to take a similar approach." So we're at the dawn of space wars. I'm glad I don't believe in that. I would be so stressed out. Imagine believing that there's going to be war in outer space and all your satellites are going to be shot down. Okay, one more thing I have to play here, then I'm going to open phones. There's an individual, one man with no help at all, took 9.6 tons of stone, big stone blocks, and he recreated a Stonehenge in his backyard. I'll just go ahead and show you this image, and then let me play a clip here because it makes a really strong point about mystification. And there's this law, Arthur C. Clarke, that any sufficiently developed technology would be indistinguishable from magic, which means, and I think this is typical, people tend to look at something they don't understand and attribute it to a higher power. And that's a logical fallacy. It'd be divine fallacy. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I would say magic is just a bad explanation for something you don't understand, or it's a non-explanation. But just because it's indistinguishable from magic doesn't mean it's magic. If you go to a magic show and you sit in your chair and you don't move and you just look at where the magician wants you to look, it's going to be indistinguishable from magic. And it's simply prestidigitation, sleight of hand. There's no real magic. So just because it looks like magic doesn't mean that it is. But when it comes to media, just because it looks real on the screen doesn't mean it is. It's just a common thing that people fall for because they're trained to mystify things. Like, oh, look at these eerie coincidences in the news. Must be aliens and AI intelligence writing the news. Must be some divine message. No, it's man manipulating man, and they bamboozle you. These individuals with the calendars and the Gematria calculators are oftentimes indirectly lying to you, or at least presenting a false picture, and they're adding into it this mystic layer that doesn't belong. But let me play this clip.
This old guy right here built all of that by himself using nothing but primitive tools. I also want to point out the fact that you've got the mainstream narrative of ancient aliens to explain everything, and then you got the YouTube narrative that is slowly growing into mainstream of Tatarians built everything. So do you guys see the similarities there of taking away from our ancestors all of the great things that they have accomplished and saying it couldn't be done by them? Because that's what this whole idea is.
Couldn't be done by man. And this explanation still flies in Trutherville. Hey, what do you make of all the 9/11 predictive programming? Couldn't be man. They all say it. It's like, who told you that? I never got that memo. You know, I'm not a confidential informant. I'm not a plant, so I'm not getting memos from some department somewhere telling me what seed to plant. But everybody got this memo that when you see an eerie coincidence in predictive programming, always say, it must be a higher power. It's like, why? You want to hide the script writers? Hide the newsbenders? Damage control? Ryler says 2003 was the year that Columbia exploded over the 33rd parallel. Columbia was the 113th shuttle launch. 113. Challenger blew up. 113. Okay, let's open up phones. We talked about Space Wars, some number stuff with 128. And I just bring this up also because there are patterns. There is evidence of scripting. We're looking at a meta-scripted, news-bent world view. This is inarguable. However, the numbers and the code have meaning that obviously means something to the programmers, but we can't extrapolate very much from that. Like, I can't tell you unequivocally what 311 means or 911, but when we see these things connected in these almost predictable ways, it shows us that, yeah, there's a pattern. But what's happening is these individuals who are using these calendars and date coding are adding in extraneous random stuff that fits. And what they're doing is they're piling on top of what could be considered objective evidence of scripting. So there are objective things we can point out that they cannot deny that would be impossible for them to explain without understanding or accounting for how manipulated news is. But if you throw in synchronicities from a higher power, or you throw in mysticism, or you throw in impossible connections, like it would be impossible for a man to do these things. Like, let's have this person say this in 666 months. Like, that is an absurd level of micro planning years in advance. Like, no, obviously a man couldn't do that, but man didn't. That's not a real connection. That was created after the fact. And so I think that's deliberate. I do think that date coders are engaging in disinformation to cover up any sort of authentic predictions, authentic understanding of what news is. And the fact that I got blocked by some of these individuals, again, just one quick example, they were all talking about how Trump's going to be 78 years and 77 days old on 8/29. I'm like, big deal. Or the episode from Trackdown that I referenced recently says here that series Trackdown with the snake oil salesman made Trump is going to be 66 years and 66 days old. Then add 6 weeks and 6 days and boom, 8/29. I'm sorry, but this is after the fact and it's getting ridiculous. It's at exactly 66,666 minutes after the Trump shooting is 1:17 a.m. on 8/29. At exactly 66,666 hours after his inauguration in 2017 is 6 a.m. on 8/29. Now, again, if this sounds absurd, if it sounds nonsensical, if it sounds like gibberish, it is. These are not meaningful connections. These are fake. And so this is what you would consider to be, I call it data poison. They're flooding the zone, so media critics get mixed in with people who appear to have apophenia and are applying apophenia as a methodology in order to get clicks. And in all likelihood, in my opinion, this is to cover up rational skepticism. So one more point on my blog post about this. Skepticism makes sense and leads to a greater understanding of the world. Mysticism and prophecy create confusion and a strange obsession with the world ending soon. I don't believe we're in the end times. I'm not operating with that presupposition. If I thought the world was about to end, I'd be acting differently. I'd be doing something different with my time. It's like, oh, the world's going to end in a couple of years, so this is too little too late. Okay, thanks for the link there. This is where it's at, and phones are now open. The link here is Elvis Merzlikins says, okay, so he was saved. Columbus Blue Jackets goalie Elvis said his teammates saved a lot of lives and his pregnant wife when he was hit by fireworks on July 4th. He died as a hero. This sounds really fishy and scripted. This is from 2021. I think I recall this one. Kiv Linex, 24, was killed on Independence Day when a fireworks mortar tube accidentally angled towards a hot tub. Several people were in the blast area. Okay, I'll have to revisit this. I don't have enough information, but yeah, it's definitely bizarre getting killed by fireworks while you're in the hot tub. And one standard of evidence that I have when it comes to these things has to do with extraordinary claims. That's an extraordinary claim. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yeah, why are you taking my thunder away, dude?
So
because that's what I was just about to bring up.
That's what I was hoping. I was like, okay, this guy, this is too much here. What do you make of it? Just on the outset, the Elvis in the hockey.
Well, let me just tell you, when that first story first broke back in 2021 on July 4th, I did a whole thing on it, and I showed how the goalie who died. There was a goalie who died for that Columbus Blue Jackets. He died on July 4th because of some fireworks blew up in his chest or something, and the goalie that took over for him was a guy named Elvis. So the goalie takes over for the guy who dies with Elvis. And what's important about the story? Let me just tell you what's important about the story. It's where it happened. I'm talking about it's who he plays for is what's important. Do you get the reference for who he plays for?
Explain it. It said Blue Jackets?
Well, it's a Columbus connection.
Oh, yeah, because Columbus, Ohio. Right, okay.
Yeah, Trump's going to get his head wound on August 4th in Ohio, and Columbus, Ohio is the capital, and Columbus is the 614 area code, and Trump is born on 614.
Very nice. And then, of course, let me see if I can pull this up. It was on July 4th, 7/4, which has some obvious significance here. 7/4 was the date of that shooter at the 4th of July parade with the 47 tattooed on his head and the Lee Harvey Oswald poster on his wall. When I saw that, I said, Lee Harvey Oswald is on the world stage. And since then, 7/4, 4/7 have been consistently tied to this Trump head wound scenario.
And July 4th, the number 7/4 also connects to August 4th because August 4th is 7 months, 4 days into the year. So that's another connection. But the real connection is the fact that he's playing for the Columbus, which is in Ohio, and it's a 614 area code. Trump's born on 614. 6 times 14 equals 84, and that's when Trump's going to get his head wound on 8/4. So it's all connected. But what's the connection today? Why are we bringing it up today? Is because another hockey player died today. I mean, yesterday. He died yesterday in a car crash, and 2 people were killed, him and his brother. So it's the not twin, they weren't twins, but a twin connection. 2 brothers get killed, and it was a hockey player from that same stupid team. Hello?
Yeah, I see it here. NHL star and his brother killed in New Jersey crash, and more Blue Jackets. Okay, and this just broke. And he's got a 13 on his helmet, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to have to look at this one closely in their ages and stuff, but...
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll give you more the connection. So it's 2 brothers killed, and they sent a text to tell everybody, today we lost 2 husbands, because it was, tomorrow would have been his sister's wedding. Today would have been his sister's wedding was today. So that's why he was there in New Jersey or something. Anyway, so they sent out a text saying, we lost 2 husbands, 2 fathers, 2 this, 2 that, 2 this. I mean, they went on and on with 2s, you know?
Okay,
and
okay.
So
now, let me go ahead and add this really quick, because I had also mentioned this Adam Johnson getting his throat slashed by player 22, and I just caught up with a couple of other details here, because it was framed by a lot of people as black and white. They made that distinction because the Matt Petgrave is the one who slashed the other player, and some people assumed, some right-winger influencers, like, oh, this was intentional, but he's player 47, so player 47 gets the throat slash by player 22, and at this same time, Derek Chauvin was 47, and he was stabbed 22 times. So I'm just bringing this up, that the 47 is apparent in this previous hockey freak accident.
Well, okay, yeah. So let me just tell you the connections here with Trump. So this guy for today, so today's connection, so he plays for the Blue Jackets, again, with the Columbus connection, with the 614, Trump's birthday being 614, and 6 times 14 equaling 84, which is the day Trump gets his head wound, and it's in Ohio, and there's a Columbus player, again, who died yesterday. And here's the connection. From Trump's birthday to yesterday's date is 2 months, 16 days, exactly, if you add the day, and that's August 4th is the 216th day of the year. So that's another connection.
And then 216 again is the Ohio connection as well. And 216 is big in this whole thing. It's hard to, like, Brock Purdy looks like Lee Harvey Oswald. BP, another 216. Betty Pearson is the character that represents Kamala Harris in Fallout, where you have the little figurine of Trump with the blood on his head. BP 216. Butler, Pennsylvania 216. The Weeknd, born on 216, and he has the whole head wound thing. So yeah, that number is very consistently, and for people who don't know, 216th day of the year is August 4th, and 216 is 6 cubed, or 6 times 6 times 6.
Exactly, and of course, Ohio has the Cleveland 216 area code also with Cleveland. But anyway, also this guy was born on 8/13. So you remember you were just talking about 1331. He was born on the 13th day. This guy who just died. He's wearing the jersey 31, and he's age 31. So
I see that.
And
yep.
And that was Taylor Swift connection. The Taylor Swift, her favorite numbers are 1331, you know, which I've explained why, because she's the Apple girl in the I Pet Goat video. She's the 13th girl. She's the 13th person in that classroom in that I Pet Goat video who holds the apple, and she drops the apple and it rolls and cracks in half. And the reason because Washington is the Apple state, because June 11th, you have the Washington State event where they're going to crack Washington State in half. And the rebirth is they have a rebirth coming out of the sea in Seattle. I mean, you know what I mean?
I do, yes. And it's mainstream. It's mainstream that Taylor Swift is a witch. She's all about the 13. She talks about 13 synchronicities. It was her 13th NFL game on the Super Bowl. They have made a big display about her obsession with that number and how she's like Princess Diana. Diana, moon goddess name, 13 lunar months. She crashes into the 13th pole. And there's all kinds of witchery symbolism around Taylor Swift. I didn't know about the I Pet Goat and the apple split in two. Although, if you split the apple in two through its equator, the halves reveal a pentagram. And I've seen a number of witchcraft books drawing attention to the symbol of the apple as a goddess symbol. But yeah, 100%. This is 1331 is a big part of the coding here, and the guy's birth date was 413. I was just checking.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Elvis dude. Yeah, his birthday was 413. Yeah. The other guy was born 813, the one that died.
Very interesting.
Yeah, the one who just died, I'm saying. The one that just died.
Dies at 31. I see that here. There's quite a few stories, so this is just new and breaking, but Blue Jackets, fascinating. So I'm under the impression that when it's a mainstream event, it's fake until proven real, and a lot of the psyops they show us have ulterior meanings. And in this case, I have no reason to think it's real because it's too high profile, too many details, too fast. When I used to work at the morgues as a transporter or at the funeral homes, one of the things that is always observed is the press doesn't get the details about who died and how until after the next of kin have been notified. There's a process, and they always make this error. Like when Kobe Bryant died, there's still smoke in the air, and there are headlines out there saying 9 people died, including this person, that person, this person. And I'm like, how do they know? You would have to wait until it's gone to the coroner and they've made positive IDs and let people know. But TMZ knew before anybody. So that tells you they're putting narrative above facts. So that's why I'm so flippant about these stories. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to give the media the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and that's because they would be sued, the media, if they were to post false information on regular people. That's why you never see those stories play out.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There's a whole process. If it's real, there's information that's withheld for a lot of reasons. But the way that these events unfold on TV it's designed to propagate messaging. It's in no relation to how things actually work. Like you wouldn't have eyewitnesses to a mass murder run to a camera and talk about what they saw. They'd put themselves in danger, not to mention putting their faces out there as a victim. These are all things that you wouldn't see. Parents would have to sign waivers. But in this case, yeah, I think that this is definitely some kind of contrivance. I'm not 100% sure on all of the meaning of it here yet, but fake until proven
well,
wrong.
Look, yeah, the whole point of it is that it's just interesting that all of this happens in August. You know what I mean? The fact that we're talking about August, when Trump is going to get his head wound next year, what I'm saying, August 4th. But because that other guy who died, he was born in August, and this guy was born in August. I don't know if you want. Can you look that up? His name was Matisse. That other one who died in July 4th. His name was Matisse. I forgot. Some Katie. He died. He was born on August 26th, I think.
Yeah. Okay. NHL goalie killed by. I'll see if I can get that information here. Someone here, Ryler says, Ohio is the heart of it all. Remember, it's the love brother that'll tear down the Twin Towers and ignite the mega powers brother. He's quoting Hulk Hogan. But yeah, Hulk Hogan and this predictive programming, I was connecting it to these other events because it was on 120.
Hulk Hogan says Ohio? Says Ohio?
Well, he says it's the heart. He says, remember, it's the love brother that'll tear down the Twin Towers. So Ryler is suggesting it's a heart reference, which I don't know, it could be. But regardless, it's interesting to see that you can look back at some instance that we would define as predictive programming, and yeah, it foreshadows something, but then years later, it foreshadows things that haven't happened yet. And Trackdown is the perfect example of this, because in the Trackdown episode, Trump gets arrested, but that didn't happen until recently. So when that story first went viral in 2016, we only had half the story. Trump, the wall, snake oil salesman. But this is before Space Force, and in Trackdown, he was talking about a cosmic threat. So the predictive programming needs to be looked at again and again as time passes.
this is the last thing I want to talk about. I'm just going to let you go because I know you want to get to stuff. But let me just ask you this question. Do you believe that Trump is going to be elected president?
Based solely on the predictive programming, it looks like we have been conditioned for Kamala Harris. So I find it to be really interesting to see, because I'm like, well, I haven't seen anything contradict that. But if he doesn't win, does he stay relevant? Does he stay on the world stage? Is there some kind of a schism? What's your opinion on this?
Well, that's why I want to bring it up. Yeah, listen, I believe he's going to be elected, but I don't believe that he's going to take office until I feel like they're going to do something to cause some kind of chaos where he doesn't actually take office until after after the June 11th event and after the August 4th event. I don't know. So I just there's just something tells me that he doesn't take office yet until after the events happen, but he gets elected as the 47th president, but he doesn't make it to the, do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't get inaugurated.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me. There's, and that reminds me, Donald Sutherland died at 88, and he was President Snow in the Hunger Games. So you have a president and a Donald dying at 88, and the 88 thing is, I've noticed it's pretty big with Trump and all this stuff, but it just seems like, based on all the Netflix stuff, it's like we're being prepared for Kamala Harris, but at the same time, Trump is still in play. I don't see how they shut him up. So, like, I'm kind of like...
Well, didn't you say that that Kamala, the Gerald Ford, he said that the president would die in office, not be elected. You get what I'm saying?
That's correct. He did say that. And that's another clue we talked about last week. Gerald Ford in the Herbert Hoover Library talks about a sitting president died, getting the woman into office, and Kamala Harris was born on Herbert Hoover's death day. I mean, that's just like,
right.
That's a pretty strong link there.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm saying. But he said that he didn't say the woman would get elected. He said that the woman would become president after the president died.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, we're getting close to the election itself, and so I'm like, I'm mostly watching the scripting. And one other point, in Fallout, this Kamala Harris character, Betty Pearson, rigs the election to steal Vault 33. So they already put that story out there, and they're already sowing the seeds for there to be discontent over the result. So I have no way of guessing and predicting other than predictive programming, and it looks like it's going to be contested regardless, but it just seems like they're... And I don't think they program but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying is that that if the Democrats, if the Republicans lose, they're not going to, I'm telling you, they won't do nothing because they're too content with their life to try to destroy it. But the Democrats, they don't care about anything. They will destroy everything. So what I'm saying is that's the more logical explanation, that they would go berserk after Trump gets elected.
That makes a lot more sense too, because we have never seen the MAGA crowd peacefully protest. They're not the ones engaging in burning down cities. They don't riot. It's not believable. But what they will do is they'll do psyops, and they'll say the MAGAs did this and blame everybody else. But no, you don't get organic reactions like that from the right as you do from the left. And the left is crazy, objectively speaking.
Yeah. Well, you'll get some protests, but nothing on the scale of what you'll see with George Floyd and all that nonsense, because besides them being paid, most of it, but, paid protesters, the PP, but they still have regular people go out there because these people are really invested in it. They're crazy. They're sick. They think they're all victims. You know what I mean?
Well, look at January 6th. Because I laughed at January 6th because we had been watching the 2020 riots go down, and then January 6th happens, and like this is a guided tour. This is a joke. This is simulated combat, and it didn't look real. Viscerally speaking,
Yeah.
it didn't ring real. It was like, this is obviously staged and hoaxy, and they managed to rewrite history in this. It's just incredible. That's why, peaceful protests, and then it goes down in history as peaceful protests. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right, bro. Anyway, hey, it was nice talking to you again.
Yeah, good.
I'll
Thanks for the
let you
call.
go.
And yeah, thanks.
All right.
Phones are open, 505-510-4226. We're talking about disease X. The disease X quarantine begins. We predicted this. Just to point out, I didn't use any Gematria calculators. I wasn't bringing out calendars and counting how many thousands of months ago it was that Elon Musk was born or something. I didn't make any predictions based on these things. I just said, based on the story as it's unfolding, the public is being conditioned and trained to believe in thought crimes, mind viruses, and they're given a justification to be complicit in the censorship of the internet. And the justification is the placeholder disease X, the WHO was talking about, and that it's going to be a mind virus. So we had already connected these dots to the rage virus in 28 Days Later that came from monkeys. The author of 28 Days Later directed Civil War, which is right-wing violence. And that's the movie where Kamala Harris kills Trump. Spoiler alert, at the end of Civil War, the Donald Trump character gets killed by Kamala. Spoiler alert, in A Man in Full, the Donald Trump character's death is engineered by the Obama guy. There are so many movies where Trump gets it, and Kamala, though, takes him out in Civil War. But my point is, we've been talking about this for almost a year, that there's going to be an internet lockdown until everybody gets their minds vaccinated, until everybody puts on a mental mask. We start screening what we say under the presupposition that mentally unhealthy people are catching mind viruses, and then they become threatening to society at large. They've made this case. The rage virus is going to be caught by people with an axe to grind because they feel disenfranchised. So we need to shut down the net. And then we see Musk threatened with arrest. We see Telegram's CEO arrested, and now Brazil blocking X. This is the quarantine, and it's all because of mind junk, right-wing, 4chan type, what they would call hate speech. But this is just the advent of the mind virus. And it's not an objective designation to call it hate speech on the right and not look at the left and apply the same standards. I consider climate change science to be hate speech. It's misanthropy. It's trying to get you to hate yourself and not want to breathe because you're a tumor on the side of Mother Earth. Like, that's very hateful. They want you to agree that mankind ought to go extinct to save Gaia. Okay, let's continue. So we're talking about psyopy, tragic events. Date coders are disinformation agents. They're in it for clickbait profits. It has to be. There has to be some kind of monetary incentive. The 11-year-old in the UK arrested. They still haven't, because he's a minor. We don't know his name, but this individual was arrested because of content he posted in relation to the anti-immigration protests. And notice how it's only right-wingers against this. Like, this is so schismatic. They created this perfect division here. So you know he's a right-winger. You know where he got his information from. Probably Telegram or Discord. But again, this is the advent of the mind virus, and he's a mind virus super spreader. We have to quarantine him. We have to arrest him, put him into a forced quarantine, because he carries mind viruses that if others catch, well, they will go attack migrants. There's no autonomy in this picture. There's no agency. We're not assumed to be in control here. That's why I don't like the idea of the mind virus, and it was popularized by Elon Musk. Nobody was talking about it. Now, the concept was really I think coined by Richard Dawkins, but it was refined by Richard Brody in Virus of the Mind. Same guy who designed or wrote the original Microsoft Word. So that alone tells you everything. Microsoft Word, think Microsoft, Gates, computer virus, mind virus, word, mind virus. It's a buildup. They trained you to react to mind viruses with the pandemic because they walked us through it collectively. Humanity was initiated. First, they taught us about safe spaces. Safe spaces to protect you from right-wing ideas on college campuses. Then it became safe spaces to protect you from super spreaders, the unvaxxed. Then the argument went further to say the reason why we have to quarantine is because they're carrying mind viruses that make them reject the cure. So now you have this conflating of the mind virus with the physical virus. So the mind virus will cause you to keep the physical virus and to spread the physical virus. So you have the asymptomatic super spreader who's healthy is a threat to society. Well, here we are, asymptomatic mind virus super spreaders. And we're the threats to society because we can hear these ideas without acting on them. We can discuss ideas without accepting them. I think Aristotle said it's the mark of an educated mind to consider an idea without believing it, something along those lines. And that's kind of where we're at. But the public, however, has been conditioned to believe that it has no autonomy with regard to mind viruses. In fact, I kind of came up with mind aids because of this. They have mind aids. They don't have a mental immune system. The government gave humanity, all mankind, they gave you all mind aids. There is a cure. It's called skepticism. Infinite plane radio is mind war inoculation. But if you automatically accept any belief, if you catch mind viruses, then what do you? You could be considered, I guess, mentally ill. You can't defend yourself, your own mind against ideas. You just catch them like, oh, don't turn on that station. You might catch flat earth. It doesn't work that way. But the public has been conditioned to accept this. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Attributed to Aristotle, probably not him. Going through your comments. Fascinating. We have 136 people so far. Let's continue flowing through my tweets here. Again, Elon Musk is a fall guy. Always has been. The people on the right are so duped if they think Musk is there to somehow save them. And some do consider him to be a free speech savior. It's like, no, he's part of the space program. That's the top tier mind control. There's some other news going on today with the Tates, the brothers Tate, human traffickers. They sell online courses on how to be mean to girls. But Top G is what they call him. So Top G has had properties seized, bank accounts frozen, and he's essentially an Epstein-esque character, now referring to him as Top Groomer. His dad was or is CIA. His dad, a master chess player, who told Tate that everything on the news is fake, that the governments are putting the public into the dark. And that's absolutely true. But he's born into the cult. I don't know how far in he is. But a lot of these right-wing characters are in the news right now taking a fall, and I think it's engineered. Like, there's an engineered destruction of a lot of right-wing influencers, which is either one of two things, in my opinion. It's either they're preparing for Trump to lose, so they're just tearing down the tent, taking down the circus tent, sending all the ringleaders home. The clowns are going home, so that you can disperse before November the 5th. Or they're stirring something up in order to create some kind of pretext for Psywar operations. Like America First, AF-16, America First, Nick Fuentes has declared something of a war on Trump. The Groypers, they call themselves. Well, the Groypers are also being connected with certain rumors about possibly planning some kind of violent political action. So they're setting the stage. I have some more information here. We're having some strange glitchy occurrences here with my keyboard. 1 second. Okay, Fallout and occult numbers. There are multiple videos on this channel posted by Dog Days about Fallout. It goes very deep. We've talked about Fallout in the script, but there's layers to it.
Hello, my friend.
And one thing about Fallout I want to mention here is when it ends, you have this scene that looks like Las Vegas, but it has a space needle in the back. And that's the end of Fallout, which is Jonathan Nolan, brother of Christopher Nolan from all the Batman movies. So interestingly, same director, Westworld. Westworld Season 4, nuke-like EMP situation, and lots of space needles. So there's this common theme with this same director at the culmination of his movies, of these seasons where it ends with nukes and space needles. What does that all mean? Okay, here's something else. This is the Andrew Tate stuff. Journalists in Romania are confirming that Viviana is the victim who made a video with him when she was 17. They have a full confirmation she was 14 or 15 in 2012. There are people, I guess they call them tater tots, the graduates or the students who are being groomed by Andrew Tate. They're out there en masse, just trying to defend this, trying to somehow clean it up and make it look like it's not that bad. But it's looking pretty bad. Exploiting dozens of women, prosecutors have rounded up 34 victims, and everyone knows what 34 means, right? 34 is the new 33. It's actually covering up the 33 because they don't want it to be too obvious. Do you remember when he first got arrested? He first got arrested after he bragged about his 33 Bugattis after Greta Thunberg said something about his carbon footprint. He said, "Hello, Greta Thunberg. I have 33 cars, my Bugattis, my Ferraris," and he just describes all the engines while he's eating pizza. And by following up on the name of the pizza company, they were able to locate him. And then from there, his legal troubles began. But it starts off with his 33 Bugatti. So it's interesting now that he's got 34 victims. So I'm pretty sure it's 33, but they just can't be that obvious anymore because some of us are paying attention. But according to the reasoning of the court and a lot of the evidence that you can read for yourself, it seems like this might be something of an Epstein-esque story on the right. Not that they won't defend it. Joe says, I haven't been paying attention. Why is Andrew Tate a groomer? Essentially a groomer in the sense that he teaches in his school, he teaches, I think his target is like young teenage males, how to control women. And these are just the tactics of emotional manipulation, isolating them, describes how to verbally abuse them, how to get some girls to punch other girls. And if you read through it, it's psychopathic. So even if you don't believe any of it's real, and a lot of people are like, oh, everything's fake. Okay, granted it's all fake. His school is still basically grooming a lot of people into this way of life, which is this idea that, you know, if you're 30 and you're in some teenage girl's bedroom, it's some kind of a win. It's very twisted. But it also goes along with, like I said, I don't get the memos, but a lot of right-wing influencers, they all got the memo start promoting lowering the age of consent. From Matt Walsh pulling over, mad, ranting at his camera. Why is the age of consent so high? And why are they mad? Well, because if they're not able to get girls pregnant before they get jobs and go to school, they won't be able to control them. This is all part of this caricature MAGA ban. You know, MAGA ban is the idea, of course, just importing certain values here that create this domestic equivalent to the Taliban. And it's all there. Just replace certain terms. Replace Great Satan with Deep State. Replace Quran with QAnon. They have the same enemies, the same agendas, but they all have the same gripes, the same complaints. Nick Fuentes was talking about this too. Nick Fuentes, America First, talking about how he can't wait to have his, and he even said, he said he's a groomer. And this is just unbelievable that people are left defending this stuff, but whatever. People defended Russell Brand. People will defend someone because of their political ideology, and it shows that a lot of truthers put things other than truth first. It's really about belonging to the group. But he was someone who was promoted, is another point here. Andrew Tate was promoted. And I think it's significant that there does seem to be a controlled demolition on the right. There seems to be this like rug pull happening right now. Because what's going to happen to all the Pizzagators and all these QAnoners and these big channels like Stu Peters and stuff if Trump doesn't win? If the MAGA train stops, they'll be out of work. And a lot of them were just actors before they got involved in this. Dinah South says, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dead Supreme Court Justice, wanted consent lowered to 12. Is that true? I'll have to ask for your source. I don't necessarily, but this whole conversation is crazy. But it just started picking up. And I noticed this as a trend. The trend was, and I think it was like even Steven Crowder. If you're a right-winger, complain about how women at the gym aren't covering themselves. Like, I guess they're supposed to wear MAGA burqas. I'm like, okay, why are they all complaining about this? They're all at the gym, and they're all mad at women at the gym, all on the same day. Like, there's a memo that goes out. And then the next day, it's age of consent. And now it's all, the Jews are going after Andrew Tate because of what he said. Like, that's his excuse. The Matrix is coming after him. But it looks to me like controlled demolition as an inside job. Remember, too, the chess thing is big with Tate. If you look at the symbolism, there's always the chess game. And if you look at it from the perspective of it all being a game, he's obviously playing. He's a player. He's not a pawn in this thing. He's not a sacrificial pawn. But no, he's leading a group of people, or he's saturating the right so that you can say, oh, look, the right-wingers are all Andrew Tate. It's a broad brush. But he's basically a mirror image of whenever they show you like crazy feminists. You got toxic masculinity, you got crazy feminism. It's just a dialectic they play. SpaceX tourist launch in trouble after rocket crash lands. This was just a few days ago because there was a planned tourist launch, the Polaris Dawn. It was going to take some civilians out into space, but Musk's rocket crashed, and that doesn't do a lot for consumer confidence. I think this is a ruse. In fact, there was a incident, I think it was in 2013. When did Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic explode? I know it was like on a Halloween. It was like a Halloween death. Where one of these, 2005. Was it 2005? Maybe it was, I'm trying to find the explosion. But when that happens, it kind of makes it so that people aren't so eager to go to space. And I think that's kind of where Musk is going with this. Like, a lot of people are going to want to go to space, and they want to control consumer demand. You know, you don't want to have too many people asking too many questions. You don't want to make it seem too available. Okay, October 31st, 2014, the VSS Enterprise crash. That's what it was. But now Musk has had a crash while landing, so that might be able to that might be used to delay people. The FAA has grounded all Falcon 9 rockets until they can finish the investigation. A return to flight of Falcon 9's booster rocket is based on the FAA. Speedy Recovery says the Polaris mission was going to conduct the world's first private spacewalk, but it's been saddled with setbacks. And we're still waiting for the return of those 2 astronauts, which won't happen until next year. The whole Calypso thing. Trump shares social media posts with QAnon phrases and calls for jailing lawmakers. So he's going full-blown QAnon. Nothing can stop what's coming. Where we go one, we go all. He's leaning heavily into it, so the QAnoners think now is the time. In fact, some say that RFK Jr. is JFK Jr. in a mask, and that it's all going to happen in a couple of weeks. Just 2 more weeks. So the news media reports this as Trump goes on a crazed, violent rant, calling for the death of his enemies. Oh, this is something I wanted to bring up with Jurassic Liars. Dawn of the Dead. Drudge Report today. They call him Dawn of the Dead. And that's because he had some PR stunt at Arlington Cemetery. He's there smiling, surrounded by adoring fans in front of the tombstones. I guess the dead soldiers are endorsing him. But Dawn of the Dead is a George Romero zombie film from 1968, which has a lot of significance. Zombie apocalypse hits the earth. Dawn of the Dead is, I guess you could trace this back to, Last Man on Earth, I Am Legend, Richard Matheson. There's quite a lot about Dawn of the Dead that we can get into, but there was something on the movie cover. I think it had the one eye symbolism, which is what you would expect. Interesting pun, though. Okay, something else here. This is a good comment by Katie Appleseed. Donald Trump is not some rogue, good guy billionaire single-handedly fighting the deep state for the liberation of people. You gotta stop with that mess. It's embarrassing. He's playing his part in the show. There's a psyop for every demographic out there, even patriots. Some people do get it. That you're not skeptical enough. You're not questioning enough if you only question the establishment, thinking that your anti-establishment position is safe. You really do have to take the anti-anti position. Again, I'm anti-anti. If you're anti-vax, I'm sorry, but I'm anti-anti-vax. Not actually sorry. If you're anti-fill-in-the-blank ethnic group, I'm anti-anti that. I can't be a part of any reactionary club that gets played day in, day out, and thinks they're saving the world. Elon Musk threatens Brazilian Supreme Court justice after they ordered a summons, which threatened the suspension of Twitter if he doesn't comply within 24 hours. Musk made an AI vision of him and sent a tweet. This is a picture of you in prison. It will be real. Mark my words. So I guess they're threatening each other with prison. Got this message by Buzzing Frets. Hey Tim, are you aware that actor Vincent Gallo showed up at a Trump event with his new girlfriend who happens to be Charles Manson's ex-girlfriend? Weird for sure. Let's take a look at this. The first time Vincent Gallo has gone public with his longtime relationship with ex-Charles Manson fiancée Afton Starr Burton. So congrats to the red carpet ready couple. And we have here the picture of her and then Trump. So what do we have here? We have Trump in front of Turning Point Action, Again, Turning Point, Charlie Kirk, is a reference to the Turner Diaries. And the turning point when the government comes to take the guns at Waco, when they come for your AR-15, 1776 is going to come back again. Turning Point. It's a clue. But yes, this actor, Vincent Gallo, hanging out with Trump, is dating Charlie Manson's ex. Very interesting little connection there. I'll have to look deeper into that one, but appreciate the info. 8 days into 8 months, how NASA astronauts got stuck on the International Space Station. We'll keep following that. Again, Calypso, the capsule, Calypso, synonymous with stranding, getting stranded. In the book The Odyssey, Odysseus is stranded by Calypso the nymph. So on the Space Odyssey now, Calypso has them stranded. So there's some kind of story here. And I think what it might lean into or go to next is what Odysseus went into after he left the island of Calypso, which is he goes across the ocean and he stops at an island. I think they see some sheep and they get trapped by the Cyclops. So I don't know what the Cyclops has to do with this, but there's the incident where as they're escaping the Cyclops, he curses them in the name of his father, Poseidon. So Poseidon may have some connection to Beasts of the Sea, the Destroyer, Nuke, Hunt for Red October, all kinds of stuff connected with Poseidon. Like Russia has this weapon that I think it's called Poseidon. Some kind of submarine delivered weapon. Yeah, one nuclear armed Poseidon torpedo could decimate, I think he said it could decimate the West Coast. Yeah, decimate a coastal city. So I have seen Poseidon in the Metascript. And Poseidon in ancient Greek mythology, god of the oceans. But he was also the one who, I think, sent storms after Odysseus and kept him on the Odyssey. You know, made it really difficult for him to get home. So if we're looking at a space odyssey, we have Calypso, then it looks to me like their whole trip is going to end in some kind of calamity. Not sure what. Catching up on comments, Ryler05 says, different actors playing the role of Charlie Manson. Yeah, there's one era where Charlie Manson seemed like a young George W. Bush. Jim Firebrand says, yep, next is the Cyclops. Well, I'm wondering what could that mean? Because as Odysseus and his crew, the ones who weren't eaten by the Cyclops, as they're sailing away, he hurls rocks at them. And I'm not sure if he hits them. I have to reread it. But space rocks, asteroids, Russian satellite explodes, ISS astronauts have to duck and cover. Just like the beginning of that movie, Megaopolis, Russian satellite explodes above New York. I have an image of it here. And it says, this is what it looks like when an empire dies. So there is some kind of story building up here. And I think the Calypso Odyssey is a huge clue. Tominoid says, Chaos is a British mythological dark comedy television series created by Charlie Covell for Netflix, released on 29 August. Chaos, keep that in mind. I'm still watching Bad Monkey. And the main thing about it takes place in Florida. It's the only Trump connection I have, Mar-a-Lago. I haven't finished it yet. But Bad Monkey, Rage Virus, and Monkey Man. There's so many examples of the Rage Virus, Angry Monkey, Bad Monkey, Planet of the Apes. There's just so much right now. And I think that we've made the case, or rather, I think it's pretty plain to see that this Rage Virus is the right-wing mind virus. Okay, I want to play a few seconds of this Fallout Vault and Occult numbers, because I haven't had time to watch it, but I just want to get the gist of it. From the director of award-winning series Westworld, Jonathan Nolan. So to be clear, Jonathan Nolan and his brother Christopher Nolan are programmers. So they're not just entertainers, but they work at a level where their narratives are part of the process of entraining the collective psyche to the news cycles, to future news events. They're not prophets. They're not inspired through some mystical means, but they're likely apprised of the fact that significant news events that make it into the history books are generally acted out on the world stage, simulated, not stimulated. You have these MAGA types who are like, oh, it was a Fed-surrection. Fed-surrection, meaning feds instigated the riots on January 6th. No, it wasn't a Fed-surrection. It wasn't a stimulated riot. It was simulated. So these metascriptors, these high-level directors, are part of the simulation. They create the simulation that we live within. Also consider Westworld is about a simulation. And the people in the simulation, Westworld, and I think the West sinking, falling, the Tower of Babel falling, is about what happens when the simulation breaks, or when the integration breaks, the monolithic integration of worldview. And the end of Westworld Season 4 is one of the EMP-like situation, where it sets the synths free. Same theme in, by the way, this is the same exact theme in Free Guy. And Free Guy is something, I think it's kind of a John Carpenter They Live remake in a way. But, you know, in Free Guy, it's about a bunch of NPCs in a simulation. And they're under the control of this evil CEO who keeps them NPCs. And one individual starts breaking free, becoming autonomous, making decisions for himself, and he discredits their model. He finds more land, and it gets reset, and everybody's set free. But this idea of a simulation that where like the Truman Show, that's the simulation. So simulation theory goes too far. It says everything's fake. I'm saying, no, the worldview is a simulation that we all participate in. Most people not knowing how much of it doesn't align with the real world. But the Nolans would obviously be into all of this. Let me go ahead and play this clip.
As a conspiracy guy, for me there is absolutely no coincidence that the main vaults in the Fallout universe have numbers that are of high importance to the secret societies that rule the world. Let me be fair and say that the game world at least has a lot of vaults with a lot of numbers, but I'm talking here about the main vaults from which the main protagonist comes out from. The most iconic moments in these stories are when the vault dweller gets out of the vault and steps into the wasteland. Before we talk about it, let's give...
Now, in the movie, the character Lucy like light, Lucy ascends from Vault 33 and escapes, and they show her walking out into the light. And there's so many examples where there's clearly some kind of allegory here. And the vault and the class of people that live in the vault live in a fictional reality disconnected from what's on the surface. And the idea in Fallout is that there's like this two-tiered society, and the luxury life in the vaults is it's pretty much like this privileged group who can't survive on the surface, where everyone has reverted to barbarism. But it's kind of describing a leveling where the rich and the poor are now on level ground. But the bunker idea here is intrinsic to Fallout. And Christopher Nolan did Oppenheimer. So the sequence is atom bomb and then Fallout. And the general public had to be re-educated about the significance of the bomb and Fallout because they're about to fake it. If you look back at Netflix 2018, 2019, it was all about pandemics. And look back at The Walking Dead and all the zombie movies. Every single zombie movie has one predominant theme. Quarantine. Quarantine. Find a place to hide from all the super spreaders. We've been conditioned. We had been prepared we lived 2020 in our imaginations for a long time, so that when it happened, in fact, there were so many examples. I remember when 2020 kicked off, people were correlating the beginning of The Walking Dead with the beginning of lockdowns, even to the extent of having scenes in The Walking Dead in the very beginning where you have boxes of toilet paper stashed. And if you remember, before the lockdown started, you did have a run on worthless paper. I mean, I think is all kind of a joke on the masses. You know, like, people are fighting over toilet paper. Meanwhile, certain people were making a lot of money. And in the same way, I kind of think it's symbolic of fighting over worthless paper as a joke. As the public fights and the power elite are the beneficiaries of one of the largest wealth transfers from the bottom to the top in human history. In the first quarter, Bezos raked in, I think, $33 billion. And then after that, here he goes. Amazon quarter one earnings, April 30th, 2020, Jeff Bezos' worth grows by $33 billion. And then he got another $13 billion in one day, which I think was one of the greatest increases. Now, this was just a little bit after that. Bezos added $13 billion to his net worth, the largest single-day jump for an individual since the Bloomberg Billionaires Index was created in 2012. And that was in July. So 33 and then 13. I'm just pointing out that the real looters weren't the people running out of the Walmarts with big screen TVs. Okay, catching up on your comments. Jim Firebrand says, Odysseus outsmarts Polyphemus by tricking him with the false name Nobody and devising a clever escape plan, reinforcing the idea that the intellect and strategy are more powerful than physical might. Yeah, Odysseus was favored by Athena and other gods because of his craftiness. He came up with the idea of the Trojan horse. That was his scheme. The Trojan horse. The Cyclops represents barbarism. Odysseus represents society. Fascinating. Now, Space Odyssey shows man as ape, brutal, killing each other with the sticks at the very beginning. And then it goes to the future where man becomes the star child and merges with the monolith. It shows some kind of evolution. And so the Space Odyssey, to me, I think the movie is really about mankind's transition into the space age. And the monolith is the symbol of the merging of man with the movie world. The monolith is a movie screen. But basically, we're being collectively programmed and processed into this cosmology and this false worldview. And Kubrick's work is instrumental in this. Nascentology is a huge part of all of this. So for these two astronauts to go up in the Boeing, which has all kinds of baggage attached to it, just the recent Boeing disasters, and now it's an epithet for disaster. The new Fly Me to the Moon movie about faking the moon landing makes Boeing disaster references. So they've been making jokes about it already. So something's going to happen. So this Boeing mission is cursed. And they're up there in the Calypso. And they're stranded. And it launches and it goes up around the same time as the previous year, the summer solstice, when we had the Titan submersible imploding. So there just seemed to be a number of elements that were repeated that just kind of suggested that this is going to be some kind of a disaster. But what exactly is that going to be? And so the launch went off and they had trouble docking. A number of the thrusters didn't fire. So we're like, okay, it hasn't exactly blown up. They successfully launched, but they had issues docking. And now they're stranded. So now the name Calypso makes perfect sense. So I'm thinking here then, yes, this is some kind of Odyssey thing. Not sure what's going to happen next, but I don't see these two astronauts getting home in one piece. Okay, continuing. Water walking Jesus says, something tells me Vince McMahon and Donald Trump would eat at McDonald's and blank on women together afterward while they talk about what they're going to do in the ring. That sounds terrible, but before Vince McMahon was kind of shuffled off the world stage, I mean, where is he now? There were some terrible stories and allegations coming out. And he doesn't look like he used to anymore. Vince McMahon docuseries sets Netflix premiere date. Harrowing allegations. This is going to be bad. And I've read some of the stuff, and it was pretty psychotic, if it's real. Okay, let's see what else. Violent Penguin said, somebody on Jurassic Liar said the fall of Troy was on 6/11. Interesting. Let's take a look. The Siege of Troy. Wouldn't surprise me. You have to look at the lore. Like Julius Caesar's birthday, 7/13, had some significance with the Trump event. Again, Trump was Julius Caesar in Shakespeare in the Park at Central Park in 2016, where they killed Trump on stage. They've been killing Trump for a long time. That's predictive programming. Violet Penguin says Starliner cost $4.2 million. Okay, continuing here. Thrustazar says, wasn't nobody what Charles Manson's mother wrote on his birth certificate? Let me see if I can find that. He did say, I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo, a boxcar, and a jug of wine, and a straight razor. Yeah, his word salads are epic. Maybe those are Bush-isms. Some people do believe that George W. Bush was playing the role of Charles Manson at some point. There are some fascinating little stories here connected to the Manson event, the Tate Bianca killings of August of '69. You have the satanic stuff. The Church of Satan witch Susan Atkins kills Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate married to Roman Polanski, who directed Rosemary's Baby, about a man whose wife is drugged because he's in a satanic cult, and then she's impregnated by the devil. Roman Polanski known for drugging his victim. So there's that connection. Then, of course, the Rosemary's Baby satanic connection to Sharon Tate being killed by a literal satanic witch from the Church of Satan. Yeah, that's close. I mean, interesting. And then you got Bobby Basoli. Is that his name? One of the Manson guys, one of the Manson cult members, who was arrested for stabbing somebody else on the ranch, Spawn Ranch. But he was he had starred in a movie by Kenneth Anger. So there's another Manson connection to Satanism. So 1968, Basoli was living with Hinman in Topanga Canyon, where he met Kenneth Anger, and he secured a part in Lucifer Rising. So this is fascinating. Kenneth Anger directs Lucifer Rising, which has Mick Jagger's music in it. I think Mick Jagger's in it. And also this Manson guy. According to Anger, the film Mick Jagger and Bobby Basoli were in Invocation of My Demon Brother. And Anton LaVey made an appearance, like a cameo. Or they brought images of him from other clips. But look, the connection here. Charles Manson, cult members, Bobby Basoli and Susan Atkins were directly connected to the Church of Satan. That's a pretty strong connection there. And then you can also connect Kenneth Anger to the Babylon working, because Marjorie Cameron, who did the Antichrist working with L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, she later starred in a film called Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, where she plays the Whore of Babylon. Again, Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger wrote Hollywood Babylon. It became a movie Babylon starring Margot Robbie, who then plays in the movie called Barbie, which I just had already pointed out. Barbie is the Whore of Babylon. So these are strong connections between Satanism, mainstream movies, the introduction of this new goddess archetype, and then this Kenneth Anger fuses a lot of things between Satanism, mainstream entertainment, and the sexual revolution. It all comes out of the same little area and same place, but it's just fascinating how it all runs in with the Manson killings or event, whatever you want to call that. HLG says, word salad with Bushism croutons. Oh, yeah. Plain Dakota says, I prefer Kenneth Happy. Well, Kenneth Anger was a Mickey Mouseketeer, and he had some disturbing allegations about Walt Disney. And he only recently died. I think he must have been 90 or something close to that. He died in May of last year, like right around the time the Barbie movie was going to come out. She was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yes. So Margot Robbie is in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's, I believe she's Sharon Tate. So she gets killed. This is interesting. Margot Robbie gets killed by Susan Atkins. Well, Sharon Tate in this movie. That's also a fascinating connection. Every single one of Margot Robbie's roles has connected with this New Age Babylon, Whore of Babylon goddess archetype, and Satanism. All of her roles. Even the Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad, it has the atom bomb on the back. Jack Parsons was part of the Suicide Squad. So the Marjorie Cameron connection to Jack Parsons, and then Marjorie Cameron and Margot Robbie. There's some fascinating connections here we could delve into. I've already looked into this. So we talk about these directors, Metascript directors like the Nolans, Kubrick, James Cameron, and how their work overlaps the real world in addition to the movie world. It's a 2 into 1, the merging of the two. And Margot Robbie, you wouldn't call her a metascriptor, but like Jim Carrey, she's one of these actors whose roles are all connected, even though the movies don't have any overt connections between them. But if you look at their entire catalog, I used to call this Hollywood archetype casting. You know, you typecast based on someone's type for different roles. Like this person would be a good cop, or this person would be a good play the role of a wife or a mother. That just they typecast. But there's a deeper level. I call it archetype casting, where it's because it's something else they embody. So Jim Carrey has all this dog star serious stuff, which has to do with the fool and the awakening of the fool, recognizing his own ignorance and having the fool's journey. Truman starts off as a false man, becomes a true man as he realizes that he's living in a false construct. But Margot Robbie has consistently been connected to the archetype of Babylon. The other half of the equation is the beast. That's why it's notable that when Barbie comes out, Oppenheimer came out, speaking of Christopher Nolan. So you have Barbie, Oppenheimer, and around that time, the hashtag that was trending was Barbieheimer. And, you know, Barbieheimer and all the memes attached to it was a cultural phenomenon that preceded and surrounded the simultaneous release of Barbie and Oppenheimer. So this isn't just some random coincidence that they made funny memes out of. The Destroyer of Worlds, Oppenheimer. That's a reference. The Destroyer of Worlds, that's a reference to Abaddon, the King over the Abyss, Revelation 9/11, the Beast of the Sea. All the beast stuff is connected to the atom bomb. The same summer, last year, Godzilla came out. Godzilla is a metaphor for the atomic bomb, beast from the sea. So you keep finding this connection between Babylon and the beast, or in this case, Barbie and Oppenheimer. There's multiple layers to this thing, and we've gone down like bombshell. The idea of bombshell came out in 1946 because of the bomb tests at Bikini Atoll. So these bomb tests become connected to the bikini because, of course, you know, the bombshell is just kind of a metaphor. But it's just, again, Margot Robbie was in a movie called Bombshell. So the bombshell has been synonymous with the advent of this goddess, the consort of the beast. That's the underlying meaning here. Babylon beast. And this is the new iteration of Christ Magdalene, or Isis Osiris. This is the pairing, the god-goddess pairing of modern occultism is Babylon beast. This is why in a couple of the recent Super Bowl events, you had Rihanna in red, surrounded by the male dancers in white. White is symbolic of the god in their symbolism of the male, Christ, whereas the goddess is red. Think communion wafer, bread, white, and the red wine, or the Red Cross Templar flag. So the red and the white represents the merging of God, goddess, Babylon, beast. It's all in their symbolism, and you can read the meaning of the lust card in the Thoth Tarot, where it describes the Holy Grail containing a pink liquid. And the pink stuff, the symbol of the goddess being tied into pink in this modern context, really did start with the Church of Satan and Jane Mansfield, who was this living Barbie doll in her pink palace, dressed all in pink, and then she becomes a high priestess in the Church of Satan before she's supposedly decapitated in that car wreck. J. Dig says, spoiler alert, Sharon Tate lives in the movie. I may have to watch that. Violent Penguin says, Ice Spice sounds like Ice S. Right, Ice Spice hanging out with Taylor Swift, who, again, endorses some kind of witchcraft. The number 13 stuff, it's all there. They've consistently connected her, and we talked about this before. Taylor Swift has been, and we're talking about world stage characters, the character they play, the role, but the symbolism that follows them around. And so she may not be an actress, but it goes deep. Like, for example, she was in a movie. Taylor Swift was in a movie called, I think I have a link to it here. She was in a movie where it was a musical. She's killed 13 minutes into the film. I'll see if I can pull that up. But let's go over a few of these just really quick. So Taylor Swift has been compared to Marilyn Monroe, Princess Di, Amelia Earhart. All female icons tragically died. So you're associating her with these dead icons. The number 13, lunar goddess, Princess Diana crashing into the 13th pillar. Here it is, Amsterdam. There's a movie called Amsterdam. Taylor Swift is killed at the 13-minute mark after she's pushed beneath a moving car. The 13th Chiefs game was a 13-hour flight from Japan. We even found references to her in Leave the World Behind. But the 13 stuff is deep, and she's been talking about the stuff for years, and we've connected her, of course, just to these this is intentional, though. Like, these world stage characters, they have these personages that are an amalgamation. They pile stuff on. Like Elon Musk is about 10 or 15 different persons added onto one. He's Tony Stark, he's Gene Wilder, he's Werner von Braun, he's Henry Ford, he's Iron Man. Just go down the list of all these things they've imbued him with. Yeah, we're not supposed to be talking about Taylor Swift. We have a moratorium on it. We only brought her up because we're talking about witchcraft and archetypes and these various world stage characters who are, for some reason, just steeped in the occult and weirdly connected to organizations like the Church of Satan or the various cults. Like Mick Jagger. What is Mick Jagger doing in Invocation of My Demon Brother, a movie with the high priest of the Church of Satan in it. What is William Shatner doing in a movie with Anton LaVey and also the Scientologist John Travolta? I think it was called Devil's Reign. Yeah, Devil's Reign, William Shatner, John Travolta, Anton LaVey. And again, Anton LaVey, Susan Atkins, his witch, goes out and kills Sharon Tate. Then he also has Richard Ramirez stopping by his church, attending rituals and going on a killing spree. I mean, is that even real? You know, recently, the daughter of Anton LaVey was interviewed by Jordan Peterson. I listened to about half of it. It was pretty good. And when she was baptized, they introduced the pink Baphomet. And the pink book, Satanic Witch, came out. And on the back, they ironically said, this book is not for Barbie dolls, which is kind of an interesting thing to say. And at the time when that book came out, Jane Mansfield was a priestess. She had a 40-room mansion called the Pink Palace at 10100 Sunset Boulevard. Her pink palace, dressed in pink, all kinds of hearts. Now, the significance of the hearts here is also the heart represents the chalice, like your playing cards. You got the hearts, the diamonds, the clubs, and the spades. Well, the spades are swords. The diamonds are pentacles. The clubs are staves, and the hearts are the chalice. So these are the four primary symbols in witchcraft. And of course, they represent the 4 seasons. There's 52 cards for 52 weeks because it's based on the sun and the cycles of time. And if you add all the pips on the playing cards, you get 365 for the year. But whenever you see hearts, like there was a lot of hearts around that Rihanna performance. In fact, when we go back to that Rihanna performance where she's dressed in red, we had broken down the symbolism of various red witches. Like in Game of Thrones, you had the red witches. But what's with all the witches in red? And here I know we're onto something here. So I talked about the Babylon working. Marjorie Cameron. You have the Red Witch from the Game of Thrones, who revives Jon Snow. You have the Scarlet Witch from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And Doctor Strange looks just like Jack Parsons. Vanilla Sky, Woman in Red. Ellie from 100. Another, she's the AI that takes over the world and basically nukes man and has a few space arcs to preserve us so they can repopulate later. But this Scarlet Lady, Richard Branson's boat is called the Scarlet Lady. So we're just noting all this stuff. And then we have the Rihanna with the red, which we had talked about. And at the same time, the national anthem at that Super Bowl, I think it's called Lift All Their Voices. It's not a black national anthem, but that's what people kind of call it. And it was sung by someone, she was wearing this big red dress. And that was, again, around the same time that we were talking about what's with all these red dresses. And then Doja Cat comes out. Here's Lift Every Voice, performed by Cheryl Lee Ralph. And you see here, she's got the red dress. So now, at the same time, Doja Cat had come out in this red skin suit, this outfit. Here it is, covered head to toe in red. So I had pointed out that she, like Rihanna and many of these other female celebrities on the world stage, are all representing this same archetype, the Scarlet Woman. That's what they call her. Marjorie Cameron was called the Scarlet Woman. Well, interestingly enough, and this is how I know we're reading this correctly, Doja Cat releases an album after this, months later, and it's called Scarlet. Released in September 2023, 4th studio album. So the album had this release party with this scarlet colored idol inside of a tank that was filled up with this red liquid. All of this stuff is tied into the same body of symbols. Again, this is why Alicia Keys was dressed in red and Usher was dressed in white. the red, white. All of this just goes back to pink and Barbieheimer. What happens, when you mix red and white? It's the pink. It represents the conjunction of God and goddess. So the word Barbieheimer, the meme, and the color pink are positively correlated. There's so many other examples of the color pink being used in symbolism last year that tie into this. Even Maui. Maui got hit by the fires, and then they sprayed pink soil tackifier. So you have the islands, you have the fires, the Godzilla movie comes out, and rumors of space lasers. So it's kind of interesting. You have this connection here between this Godzilla-like attack, this mass incineration, and then it gets covered in pink soil tackifier. Just another link here, but if you haven't seen Barbie, I would recommend it if you're interested in how they're essentially selling a new concept of the goddess to the masses, that this is actually idol worship. And it's related to a number of themes that are worth kind of looking into. Like the theme of Barbie was she becomes a real woman, and Ken remains a Ken doll, and men are superfluous in this Barbie world. But the fact she becomes a real woman is kind of, how would you describe it? It's, if you really watch the movie with the subtext in mind, it's not for kids. I'll say that because of the euphemisms. Continuing through your comments, Jay Digg says, in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, the main villain is a female necromancer, Sophina, the Red Wizard of Thay. I have an image of her. She's the antagonist, a member of the Red Wizards. Here's a picture of her. Well, let's take a look here at a couple other things I can add into this. So Rihanna's Super Bowl, she's in red, and she has her moon bump showing. Then you had the dancers in white surrounding her. And then I mentioned Alicia Keys and Usher. Well, there's another thing at the same time. Remember, I said the heart. I mentioned the heart, the symbol of the heart being synonymous with the goddess. It's the chalice. Well, there was this performance by Kendrick Lamar, who plays the black. And this is another thing, too. Kendrick Lamar had one of his albums out where he does the Black Christ thing. It's The Heart Part 5. You look at the cover art, Kendrick Lamar, and he's got the crown of thorns. So the significance here, though, is that when he performed this live, again, heart is a goddess symbol, he dedicated the song to women's rights. And so he did this performance for Heart Part 5, and while he's performing it, he's dressed in white with a crown of thorns, and he's surrounded by female dancers in red. And they're basically smearing blood all over him. So what you're looking at here is the Christ dressed in white, surrounded by goddesses or goddess representatives in red. And then again, heart is thrown out there. He got some kind of an award for that performance. And I remember watching it just thinking, okay, what's with all this blood and this crown of thorns stuff and this Black Christ stuff. And this, here's a picture of him here. Kendrick Lamar wears crown of thorns at Glastonbury Festival as blood appears to fall from his head. Anyway, this is their worship. This is the occult religion of the power elite. They worship a god and goddess pairing. So you can't even call them Satanists because they worship Christ. But they have a different concept of it. They have a goddess. They have, it's more like pantheism. And if you were just to say, oh, they're just Satanists, well, then you're kind of minimizing it, and you're falling into this false dichotomy of it's Satanists versus Christians, when it's really, I don't think it's that simple. You can't just take, it's like truthers versus the mainstream media. It's like, no, truthers are all controlled opposition. So here's an image again, just to kind of reiterate here, the white and the red, Christ, Magdalene. Yes, a Newful, you got it right. And in the tarot card that I mentioned, and I've read the book on it, it's called the Book of Thoth, where it goes into detail about what every facet of the card means. So here's the card that I'm referring to, that it has the Scarlet Woman, the Babylon, riding the beast, and she's holding her chalice. And you can't really see it here so much, but the inside of the chalice is pink, and they call it the elixir. And it represents, again, the goddess or the Babylon and the beast. Again, their whole religion, and I say their religion, it's the cryptocrats. Behind Nasatology, behind scientism, is a mystery school. And the mysteries are typically, and this is why they're called the mysteries, is they're veiled. There's layers of meaning. And unless you have the initiate's interpretation, you wouldn't know what was beneath the surface. You're thinking, I'm just watching a movie about Barbie. No, you're watching a movie that's meant to transform or change attitudes. You're looking at a perception management stunt. You're looking at a psyop. Okay, I'm catching up on your comments. I want to say thanks to everyone here who has left one. We have more than 107 people on the main channel, 50 people on Twitter, 10 people on DLive. Again, this is Disease X, quarantine begins. As you see more and more of this, people being arrested for what they're tweeting, the social media magnates being impugned, attacked as somehow being responsible for actions of people on the ground. They're all complicit in it. Ryler says, I have the Crowley Tarot deck. Very good. It is very interesting. The artwork is unlike any other deck, but you do have to read his book about it to understand what it means, because it doesn't really tell you much unless you're versed in the meaning of the colors and everything else. But what you find out is that every single detail is accounted for. Nothing is there randomly. But also, Crowley called himself the Beast. And when he called himself the Beast, it didn't mean that he was the devil. He called himself the Beast as frequently as he called himself Christ. Like these things were synonymous to them. That's the point here. So it's not like it's a twisting or a perversion or an inversion, but no, it's the authentic meaning of it, if you look at it purely as an astro-theological cult and a mystery school. Osher has passed out 5 wrenches, a Newful, FMGR, Scott Rankin, Bach Precision, and T-Rex in Space have all received the coveted blue wrench. Again, abuse the power responsibly. You all know what to do with it. And if it wasn't for the power of the blue wrench, we wouldn't have this. You realize that we wouldn't be able to have a think tank. It wouldn't have survived this long if we didn't actively suppress the opposition and create a safe space. Dirk Zink says, I just got on. I'll watch. I just finished my day. Complete nightmare. I look forward to a great podcast. Awesome. Well, we've had a lot of great comments. And the main topic tonight has to do with the fact that we're correct. That Disease X, the placeholder virus that's going to take down the world according to the WHO, was always about mind viruses, rage viruses, and the idea that we need to inoculate our minds and censor the internet and sanitize it before we're allowed to engage in it as a commons again, because of whatever's going to happen next. And they're setting the stage for that. It's already happening. They're already doing it. Every shooter is like, oh, well, he had a Discord account. Oh, that explains it. He went to Twitter. That explains it. And think back 20 years. Oh, he went to a radical mosque in Yemen. That's why he shot up the National Guard recruiting station. He went to a radical mosque and he heard some radical Quran verses from a radical cleric. That was the external terrorist, the 9/11. The internal domestic terrorist, the 6/11 connections. It's all about the internal threat where, again, QAnon, not Quran. It's versus the deep state, not the great Satan. But we do have the domestic equivalent. It's vanilla ISIS. Ryler05 says, I agree, Christians are the ones who are ignorant, like all the mainstream religions, about what they're actually worshiping. Yeah, I would say that mainstream religion is controlled opposition. They hide and conceal intentionally. They definitely are controlled opposition. Like, oh, I have some spiritual inclinations. Let me go listen to these guys. And what are they really doing? What is their real purpose? And I think it's ultimately world view monopoly. And I look at it as a form of filtration. Like the Bible is the old monolith. The Quran is these are filters that they merge the myths with reality. And the priesthood is able to put everybody into the same box. And it's not just an ideological box, it's a world view. It's a frame of reference. So you're filtered through this particular screen or this particular book. But the difference is we have all these various competing religions, competing worldviews with their own versions of heaven. So what they have done is they've created this new worldview. The new Bible is your smartphone. They just haven't completely censored it yet. It's not the pure, authentic, state-approved worldview, but it's getting there. But the new heaven, space, is one that everyone can agree on. Everyone believes in it. So we have a universal religion in Nasatology. It's like Scientology. And Scientology is relevant here. Remember, the genesis of the space program, you have individuals like Jack Parsons representing the Mystery Babylon, but then you have L. Ron Hubbard representing science fiction. So Scientology is a space religion, so is Nasatology. That's why I say that. And the difference between Nasatology and Scientology is simply Nasatology has better special effects. Scientology has better actors. I can't wait for Tom Cruise, the Scientology Jesus, to go to space. They're going to merge the two. And I was never a Scientologist, but I did spend time there. And I did read their books. I have firsthand information, and I walked away from it with an understanding of how it works. And then I recognized it again when 2020, the pandemic came out, and I suddenly realized Scientology is based on the pandemic model. Only mind viruses. They call them engrams. So the Church of Scientology's entire basis for existing is that mankind is infected with engrams that make us into criminals, make us do bad things, and you have to get rid of all your engrams. Well, what are engrams? These are mind viruses that you passively accrue. You just catch them walking around. So you have to purge them. So interestingly, they want to clear the world and go into quarantine. Every time you go into an org, you're quarantining, and they told me, I quit hanging out with them when they told me that I couldn't associate with my girlfriend if I wanted to stay with them because she was a reprobate in their minds. She was not interested in Scientology. They didn't like her job. They didn't like the fact that she was probably on drugs. And like, well, everything she does is going to affect you. And if you come here, you're going to lower our tone scale. So to keep everybody on a high tone scale, you had to disengage or disconnect from people who weren't going to go along with it. And the cults put pressure on you to do this. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about quarantine. Quarantining a pure worldview, but also the idea that you can purify other people by converting them into your cult. And then the non-converted are called SPs, like super spreaders. They're the SPs. What are SPs? Suppressive persons. Those who won't take the mind vax. Those who won't take the Scientology clearing. They won't get their minds cleared, so now they're a danger to you. So just replace minds with bloodstream. Mind virus with virus. It's a model. It's a template for control. I would even say, too, that engram, at the time, I just understood it to be like sin. Oh, they've come up with a new version of sin. But they've defined it with kind of like psychobabble. That's what they kind of did. But now I'm looking at it as this is for control. The concept of sin was given a new iteration with the engram in Scientology. But I would even go so far as to say that the virus concept, as it's been applied in the scamdemic model, is in fact a replacement concept for the old idea of sin. Divides people into saved and unsaved, and the saved are those who go to church and take the injectable Eucharist. And by church, I mean those who believe mainstream media. They've created this split by design. It's a intentionally created division. Dirk says, you speak the truth and it feels empowering to listen to the truth about an insane fallen world. Yeah, it's actually very much so, because it's disempowering to believe all this stuff. Like, I better watch the news so I know if I should duck and cover beneath my desk. Like, you're not going to see me groveling. I'm not going to be quivering on my hands and knees because I see a mushroom cloud on the screen. And if you believe in nukes, that's how I see you. No offense, but you're triggerable. You're triggered. You're scared of whatever they put on the screen. Partisan fears. But the control freak thing is key here. I call it a world view monopoly. And that's what all religions have done. Religions have competed from the very beginning to try to get everybody on the same side. And right now, the mainstream media has supplanted and replaced religions. And here's one thing to consider. We talk about these occult rituals, like the Super Bowl stuff, and other events, and all these archetypes. Why are they doing it? These are simply modern iterations of older gods, goddesses, and myths. Like, it's called syncretism, and they engage in a lot of it. So the first clue for me was the rockets, named after dead sun gods, who are always symbolized by obelisks. And I did this video called Cult of the Obelisk, where I break this down. But one of the things that really clued me in to the fakery of the space program, one of the first things I realized was, oh, this is a Masonic Egyptian mystery school. And everything I've learned since I had that initial impression has built upon this, that the rocket is quite literally an obelisk. Yeah, maybe it does perform some functions, maybe it does fly, but it doesn't go to space, because heaven is fake, or the space heaven is fake. But it's all optics, it's all pageantry. You convince the masses that, yeah, we can take you to heaven now. We have our multi-planetary future. We're now in charge of our own evolution, the singularity. Technology has saved us from the fallen world and climate change. We've risen above it. But instead of the old obelisk, like the one that the Pope bows to 3 times a day at St. Peter's Basilica, the new obelisks can actually fly you to heaven. But they're the same symbol. It represents resurrection, ascension. Okay, a couple notes. Tomorrow is Saturn Day, so we always do Infinite Plane Saturn Day. Last week it got bumped to Sunday, but tomorrow will be Open Phones, Infinite Plane Saturn Day. Lots to talk about. On September the 1st, I'll be releasing the inaugural, the digital version anyway, of the IPS Insider. And the cover art is sort of available. This isn't the entire thing, but the penguin, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. This is an AI rendering, but I am using it, but I'm enhancing it. So this is going to be available digitally on the 1st, and then I'll probably order some print copies, but we're getting it going. A tabloid you can trust. This will be the hot sheets, and it's going to be a monthly publication. And then later in September, we'll be doing the Autohoaxology convention, the AutoHoaxCon, and we're consolidating. This is a consolidation of minds who have the right perspective. We are on the right side of the screen, and I think it's important that we gang up on that premise. All right, this is Dinosaurs in Space by Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms. Thanks for joining. We'll see you all tomorrow.
dinosaurs in space.